A very good morning to all of you. We'll just begin the program in a few minutes from now. Good morning. The PG and Research Department of Zoology, Dr.Ambedkar Government Arts College, is very pleased to welcome you all for the third and the final session of this program on National Capacity Building Training on Marine Biodiversity and its Conservation. We are happy and appreciated to have with us three important resource persons for this virtual platform. Our first resource person for the day is Dr. V. Balaji, OMCAR Park Bay Conservation and Education Center, Rajamadam, Tanjavur. He'll be presenting on the Park Bay conservation measures. Our second resource person is Dr. M. Anand, Assistant Professor and Head in Charge, Department of Marine and Coastal Studies, Madurai Kamarajar University, Madurai. He'll be presenting on climatic changes. Our third resource person for the day is Dr. Deepak Samuel, Scientist E, National Center for Coastal Management, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climatic Changes, Chennai. So these are the three resource persons. They are with us today. We welcome them all on behalf of the organizing committee of the Zoology Department of Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College and on behalf of the participants. So today's theme is conservation strategies, climatic changes, policies and issues. For the past 2 days, we were into the fascinating world of the marine invertebrates and the marine vertebrates. You had a glimpse of the various marine organisms, their conservation measures, and what are the various policies to protect them. And today, we are going to go into the next important aspect of how climatic changes are involved in affecting the biodiversity. It is now widely recognized that climatic change and biodiversity are interconnected with one another. Biodiversity is affected by climate change with negative consequences for human well-being. But biodiversity, through the ecosystem services it supports, also makes an important contribution to both climatic change mitigation and adaptation. Consequently, conserving and sustainability and managing biodiversity is critical to addressing climatic changes. So these resource persons will be discussing more on the conservation strategies and the climatic changes, policies and issues. Now, I request Ms. Malay Chelvi, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College, to introduce our first resource person, Dr. V. Balaji. Over to Malay Chelvi, ma'am.
Welcome to all. I am very glad to introduce and invite to the resource person Dr. V. Balaji, Director, Organization for Marine Conservation Research, Park Bay Center, Tanjore, Tamil Nadu. Mr. V. Balaji completed his PhD on Bharadas University. Previously, he was working as Senior Research Fellow in 2003, funded by Ministry of Environment and Forest, and Pathmetic Survey Academic Alexander Sidenko for 1 month in 2002 for near India. He was specially expertise in the field of acoustic mapping and data processing for spatial and temporal change analysis in seagrass beds. Then mathematic survey and 3D GIS mapping and analysis. Seagrass and mangrove rehabilitation techniques. Installation of fish aggregating devices. Community awareness and orientation training on marine conservation for public and inland departments. Finally, initiating community-based marine mammals, stranding response rescues and release since 2009. And he was a recipient of IUCN Young Professional Award in 2012 from World Conservation Congress, Tamil Nadu State Environmental Award in 2014 from Government of Tamil Nadu, Geospatial Excellence Award in 2015 from Department of Science and Technology, and he also a member of IUCN Commission since 2012. Now, I invite our resource person, Dr. V. Balaji, to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Malechelvi ma'am, for the introduction. Now I request sir to share his screen.
Good morning to all. Sir, I shared the screen.
Yes, sir, your screen is visible. You can carry on.
With the blessing of Almighty, I would like to thank and appreciate the wonderful effort of organizers, Dr. N. Tirunavukarasu, Dr. R. Saravanan, Dr. T. Kumaran, Head of the Department of PG and Research Department of Zoology of Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College. And I would like to share our grassroots efforts in conservation and how it's somehow have little impacts on coastal ecosystem in north side of Park Bay. 2 months before, our organization has donated 21,425 kg of rice, groceries for widows, disabled, and hygiene supplies. So you can see on the left side, there are a huge number of villages that received our relief materials in the first 2 months of COVID lockdown. And during the Gaja cyclone in 2018, our entire team stayed in our office, which is located very close to the beach, 600 meters from the beach. And from small children to elder people from surrounding village, they stayed in our center. So our volunteer and staff team stand behind the doors and windows to hold down, to safeguard the people from the cyclone. It was around 160 kilometers per hour. And in the next 10 days, our team volunteers continuously worked and to donate relief materials as per the guidance and support from local government. So why, as a conservation organization, OMCAR has been involved in such a disaster relief and giving support to needy people in the time of in the difficult times? Because we believe that conservation is not just a single word. If I like the animal for conserve, and it's my own interest, and it's not just a conservation of specific ecosystem and conservation, it's also a responsibility of taking care of the people who are living there, who are the actual stakeholders. And it is also to support local government, it is also to support central government for policy level changes by baseline information about the ecosystem where we work. You can see in these 3 photos on the left side, the woman received goats. It's just a week before, and you can see people received goats, and this is the livelihoods. It's one of the livelihood support we provide. On the middle, you can see the mangrove nursery because they receive livestock and livelihood support from our organization, and they also work out in our mangrove nursery. And on the right side, you can see mangrove plantation. So they are planting mangroves not just for them to protect the coast. They also plant mangroves because they are one of the important mangroves are one of the important ecosystem that fix the atmospheric carbon on the ground. So they call blue carbon. So they also plant mangroves for all of us. So our office is located on north side of Park Bay. You know, the Park Bay is located between India and Sri Lanka. And this is one of the image from our office, an aerial view from my office. It's a very beautiful ecosystem. And if you move like 600-meter walk from our center, you can see the beach. And this photo was taken a few kilometers away from my office under the sea. And it is a very beautiful and highly biodiverse ecosystem. And my journey here for conservation started 20 years before when I was doing my BSc, and got interest to take underwater photos after seeing seagrass beds with local fishermen. And this interest further led me to finish my master's in marine biology. What happened is when I was studying my master's, I also worked in different NGOs, community-based organizations as a volunteer, where I learned about issues of fishermen and how actually our local coastal ecosystems and the community interact with each other. And these fishermen also have very important traditional knowledge. And when you see the textbooks, you can see lots of international knowledge sharings and things. But if you go to the village, and you cannot find such an invaluable traditional knowledge in any textbooks even until now. So in order to find this in the field, I decided to travel myself, borrowed old Yamaha bike from my friend and traveled along the coast of Tamil Nadu, 1,200 kilometers. And after this expedition, I wrote a report about my experience and sent a copy to the President of India in 2003. And with his great generosity, he wrote back me a letter, appreciation letter, and which is a real asset in my life, and which prompted me to further go. And in 2003 onwards, I started independently work and received a small funding support from WWF India for creating awareness about sea turtle conservation, and did research in mangroves for my uncle. And from 2003 and 2006 onwards, if you want to move towards a conservation field, and I was really in a position to search the platform where I have to work. Then I decided to create my own platform. So I have to improve everything, everything. It's from scratch to an organization. And it's also very important for the people who are working in the conservation to develop their networking as well as the communication skills. So a mangrove restoration is one of the first work we have carried out. So before starting this work, in the initial period of this mangrove restoration work, I learned techniques from the experts from Australia and the experts from India, and also worked with the small village communities in Thailand, and some basic GIS techniques. And it also gives me a wide exposure to visit even the tribal communities in Philippines. You can see I eat a worm, a nematode, which is very healthy. At the same time, it is one of the traditional food of tribal people living in Philippines, and diving experience with the different people, including National Geographic conservation. But in 2006, I had an opportunity to visit Baltic Sea with a big group of environmental people, and we did a sailing expedition for a month. And during this visit, I learned lots of international conservation what is happening in different parts of the world. So I saw people riding a sea kayak in those places. So when I come back to India, I thought, why don't we use the sea kayak for environmental awareness, particularly to talk about the issues related to climate change and also seagrass, mangroves. Also, you can see in the photos. I'm in the middle. You can see I was actually trying to escape from uh, underwater when I capsized myself. It's a practice session. The fact is, I never learned scuba diving before, sorry, sea kayaking before, and just started the expedition from Rameshwaram to Chennai. On the way itself, I learned about seas, and old fishermen told about the ocean sea conditions every day. So when you travel in Park Bay, it's very convenient, it's very calm and peaceful. But after crossing this point, Kalimer up to Chennai, and I had faced such a difficult situation. Actually, the problem is not with ocean. I was not aware of how to observe the natural conditions in the sea, like fishermen. And those traditional knowledge from the fishermen actually taught me how to ride the kayak and entry and exit. So much adventurous moments, paddling with the dolphins and lots of fishes, and sometimes I capsized alone underwater, and it was just even within a few seconds of changes in the sea will let you in a very dangerous situation. It's not just for expedition, and so whenever I come back to the shore after paddling 15 to 20 kilometers every day, I used to talk to the fishermen about conservation of seagrass, how it affects local and how it's positively you give a contribution to our society, and also talk about coral reefs and the endangered species of Tamil Nadu coast. So during this expedition, I learned more about the sea than any professional degree I got from the universities. The fisherman told about the currents in Tamil Nadu coast, and you can see lots of young people die in the coast of Tamil Nadu because they just don't understand the process of ocean in our coast and the waves and currents. And if you paddle very close to the shore, it's very difficult. If you paddle like 1 kilometer from the shore and 10 to 11 a.m., you can see this Vanni Vellam and Tendi Vellam. They are the currents that are flowing parallel to the shore. So you can easily paddle like turtles moving in Finding Nemo movie under the ocean. So in the next few years, I had to learn myself about GIS and lots of conservation related techniques and field implementation techniques. Parkway Environmental Education Center is slowly developed, and it was not easy journey to become an independent environmental conservationist. The main issue is funding, but it's not just a main issue, and there are lots of several issues, and we had to actually professionally learn to establish the center. So this center has been serving for local community, and more than 11,000 students and different stakeholders visited our center. And for the student, we never teach anything. It's not a teaching session. We let them to see the mangroves in our coast, seagrass beds, and how they are actually contributing for fishery productivity. And we also get visitors from research institute. We give them non-profit service for accommodation and food, and help them whatever way in the field work. And we also give technical sessions for the trainees from forest department, and skill training for fishermen and fisherwomen. So in the I would like to say that in after crossing these more than a decade, and we have a very little contribution, but it's a very solid contribution for the conservation of ecosystems in Park Bay. I would like to show some photos now, and you can see I standing sorry when I visited Philippines, I visited a different mangrove restoration site, and how the local community did mangrove restoration in those places. And here in this photo, you can see there are monospecies mangrove plantation, and local community told that these are not these mangroves were not effective during the cyclone. But on the backside, you can see the mixture of different species of mangroves. So this is the DRR, means disaster risk reduction. So this island community is told that the mangroves should be equally mixed, and by it has to be more than one species for mangrove plantation. And in Indonesia, when I visited this place, there people, you can see this people planting mangroves by using their own traditional techniques on the elevated platforms. And so when I come back to the Park Bay again, the community-based mangrove restoration also started from our organization. In the first year, we planted some mangroves, but what happened is we got very low survival rate. So if you plant not 100%, it's only 45 to 53%. Then we discussed again with local fishermen, and they told such the proper way of planting mangroves. So it's not just you cannot have a blind view that if you have a scientific background, you go and talk to the fishermen and local community about whatever the things, and you have to learn from them and incorporate both scientific and traditional techniques, which is the only way for tackling climate change in the next decades. So we established backyard nursery for the very long time, and more than a decade of experience in backyard nursery with local community groups. This is one of the reference site in the first experience of our organization for mangrove restoration based on the traditional knowledge as well as community scientific techniques involved. You can see two arrows showing uh, mangroves. They are actually stunted mangroves because of cattle grazing, and people used to cut for fuel wood. And we discussed with local fishermen and not to cut the mangroves, and they agreed to grow the mangroves here. So it's a participatory. We see on the backside, on the other side, there is a shoreline, and there were also stunted mangroves. And in 2008, you can see a little fence on the backside, and at the same time, there is a slow improvement of the trees in terms of height. And see on the both side, there are some plants. And in the third image also, you can see there's a little improvement. So we observed that planting new mangroves is more expensive. At the same time, if you conserve the existing degraded mangroves, the stunted mangroves, they showed a very good and fast recovery. So it is better for it is better to go for protecting existing mangroves. So planting mangroves will be the last step if you need it really. And 2010 and 2011. This is a very small patch of mangroves, and but what happened after this site? The fences were broken naturally, and the cattle again come inside. But during this time, when all the cattle came inside, and they used to eat again the mangroves, but not the top side because they grow more than the height of cattle, so they can only eat the sides. Uh, you cannot have like 100% result from here, but at least after the impacts from cattle, and these mangroves are now growing bigger and more wider. And this is another patch of mangroves we have planted in the beginning year of our organization, and now it's like a very line of beautiful mangroves. We used to collect mangrove propagules, I mean seedlings from these, and planting to other. We have been planting in other areas also. And during Cyclone Kaja, these mangroves were damaged partially. So when we consider mangrove conservation, it is not possible to plant mangroves everywhere. So before planting mangroves, we have to discuss with community. You should not plant mangroves very close to the houses because the mangroves also produce mosquitoes. So we wanted to actually understand spatially where we can plant mangroves and where we should not plant mangroves. So the NRDMS, with the support from NRDMS, National Resource Data Management System, Department of Science and Technology, we started a small project for creating GIS map with the participation of local community. and we displayed. Actually, it's producing a GIS map of land use pattern and mangroves. This helps us to understand where to plant or where we should not plant. At the same time, it also helped the local panchayat office to identify the areas for working this Mahatma Gandhi NREGA scheme. It helps to spatially communicate with other people during the meetings. So the mangrove plantation from seed banks created by Omkar still continues in 2020, and we have been planting mangroves only in selected areas. We are not believing large scale, huge project for very short period of years. And we believe that long-term work with the small grants will make more changes than huge projects. So in 2019-20, we produced about 15,000 mangrove seedlings. We means not our organization. The local community produced with the guidance of WOMCA, and we planted in a selected area with the permission from the forest department. And we also donate mangrove seedlings to forest department and other NGOs in the past. And we have a little impact on conservation of seagrass beds in Parkway. I would like to briefly talk about it. So seagrasses, they are very important to fix the atmospheric carbon. We can the blue carbon under the sea. They are marine flowering plants, and if I assume about 55,000 hectares of seagrass present, and they extend up to 8 kilometers from the shore. 8 to the depth, maximum depth will be 8 to 9 meters. So the problem is nobody knows how much seagrass exactly we have in Parkway. When you conserve the ecosystem, it is important to know the area of ecosystem and how actually it changes with period of time. Like mangroves, you can use like satellite images for getting the basic baseline information, but it is not possible with seagrasses because they are underwater. So Omkar take long years of effort to convert a fisherman boat into a research boat, and we set up our own equipments. We purchased different very basic equipments and advanced acoustic equipments. So you can see on the right side, this is a transducer. So this transducer actually collect the data about the depth as well as the height of seagrass leaves, seagrass meadow canopy, and it sends back to this system, the yellow box, and it's stored finally in the laptop. So the data will be stored as DTPX format, and after collection of data. So when you start this, when we start this boat in the early morning, we cannot stop the boat until late evening. So it has to continuously go up to 8 kilometers from the shore, perpendicular to the shore, and again go parallel to the shore and come back again. So it's like a very pre-planned survey method. On the left side, you can see there are two laptops. One is actually helping us. It's a low-cost navigation device connected with the GPS and the software. It helps to go in a straight line in the sea, and the second laptop is collecting the data. So at the end of the survey, this project is funded by DST, and at the end of the survey in Tanjore district, we have collected 8,58,000 pings. So each ping has a data about latitude, longitude, depth, and seagrass canopy height. It does not show the species. We cannot identify the species using this. So this is the outcome. Sorry, output. This is the bathymetric map of Tanjore district in coastal area. You can see it's very shallow, and you can see this is about 8 kilometers from the shore. And on the right side, you can see the huge seagrass bed, and even you can see there is a small gap here. It is about 5.6 kilometer in length and 750 to 1 kilometer width. This place. Now you can imagine how big this seagrass bed, and these dark dots are showing dense seagrass bed in Tanjore district. We also completed similar study in Pudukkottai district, and we have been working for publishing these. And we, at the same time of this survey, we also took effort of taking georeferenced underwater video. This is a permanent asset for our organization. You can see we completed in 2014, maybe 2024, 34, and 44, and even more for our future generation to understand there is a huge seagrass bed was there. And uh, so it will help for future generation to compare and assess what is actually happening in our coast in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem changes. So this is a output. So this paper published, I think, more 7 to 8 years. I never published any papers, and this is the one in Indian Journal of Geomarine Science. So this baseline information we have submitted to DST, and also we have given these copies to, we have shared this to Wildlife Institute of India. And with the leadership of Dr. Shivakumar, Wildlife Institute of India has been doing tremendous effort for conservation of dugongs in Park Bay, and also Tamil Nadu Forest Department. So they are taking more effort and very good effort for establishing community reserve in Park Bay. And we are very happy that our baseline information is helpful for the government for this effort. So seagrass transplantation also carried out by Omkar for Tamil Nadu Forest Department. You can see there are some photos. Left side, we collect seagrasses in the donor sites, and we actually transplant the seagrass rhizomes, not seagrass leaves, and we put it in a small crafts and transferred and fixed on the seafloor at 4 to 5 meter depth. Seagrass frames fixed on the seafloor, you can see they are very beautiful, but the truth is they are just fresh leaves. So after 1 week or 10 days, if you go back to the site and there is no leaves, you cannot find any leaves there. It's just those frames and rhizomes present. So only after 1.5 to 3 months, the leaves slowly, the rhizome has to go inside and they have to fix themselves and produce the new leaves. This is the way actually seagrass behave. They express the seagrass. You can see here also before and after photos of seagrass restoration. And this is also on another angle. So what is the fact behind it? And it's economically expensive. Yeah, we need scuba diving and it's a very slow process. So instead of transplanting seagrasses, the seagrass plantation is essential and important. Only there is no option for natural recruitment, a natural expansion of seagrass bed. So in Parkway, there is a huge seagrass bed already there, but some areas really needed seagrass transplantation. And you can see it's very economically expensive. We try to reduce the cost, and small boat sail trawlers. These are the like outboard motors, and they continuously use trawlers and very close to the beach. So it actually affects the seagrass restoration. A part of our effort, the seagrass frames were damaged, and we had to again go and fix it again. They were damaged, and it is actually we need more regulation on controlling those small boat sail trawlers. You might have seen that we used PVC frames. We took effort after 7 months to collect every frames, but it was very, again, a manual work. We had to dive and take and find it. We collect nearly 89% of frames, but not everyone. So in the next year, we we developed our own method of making frames, seagrass frames using bamboo, and as well as using sacks. We also used coconut ropes. You can see in the middle here. Yes, and we are in the process of publishing this paper, and it is in the press. And now I would like to go for how Omkar has been supporting local government, particularly forest department, for sea turtle marine mammal standing response. So since 2007, we have been documenting marine mammals. Before that, there was no such documentation or photographs available. So we have been documenting, start from whales to porpoise to dugongs for a very long time. And so we also a part of successful release and rescue. And there are a very good effort from Tamil Nadu Forest Department, particularly also the Marine Police Department in Manamelkudi and Sethu Bhavachatram, Dadranapatnam have been contributing as we are working in this area, and have been, they are very much contributing for the conservation of dugongs, and they also a part of our they also a part of this conservation effort for a very long time. And after Wildlife Institute of India came to this place for conservation of dugongs in our parkway, and it's actually a big boost for conservation of dugongs. And you can see on the right side here, it's Mr. Madhu Makesh has took tremendous effort. In the midnight, he traveled nearly 80 kilometers in the rainy day along the east coast, and in the bike he himself reached this place and conserved, and he actually saved the dugong with the local fishermen, for which the local community is really thankful, because they also received compensation from WIA. This is such a positive impacts have been undertaken by like different stakeholders in Parkway. But it is also always not a positive story about when we talk about dugong conservation, and still the dugongs have been dying. And this dugong was ashore in the same year in 2020, just a few months before. You can see such a huge, beautiful animal. And in order to conserve such animals, and we have to protect the whole ecosystem, and it needs lots of more efforts and compensation, more compensation and support to fishermen. So Omkar also has been providing technical support for Tamil Nadu Forest Academy. We have been received 1,600 trainees from Tamil Nadu Forest Academy. We provide we have been sharing our experience with seagrass, mangroves, and as well as marine mammal rescue and release in north side of Parkway. And this is a paper we published about understanding the effectiveness of artificial reef. Artificial reef are concrete structures that are actually installed for increasing fish productivity under the sea. But so we wanted to study whether the artificial reef actually helps for increasing the natural population of fishes when compared to seagrass beds. We fixed underwater cameras, recorded videos, and it's published. And it may be helpful in future where we can install these structures and where we should not install these structures. And we also have been doing squid breeding techniques with a very low cost and biodegradable material. You can see some these structures are helpful the squids and cuttlefishes to lay their eggs. It's like lakhs of like eggs released into in the water by these cephalopods. And Omkar has been working not just for conservation, we also work for sustainable livelihood. If you see the places like Tanjore district and Pudukot district, the people not just doing fishing all the time, not all the villages, they also partly doing farming activities. There are adjacent villages located from the coast. These villages are also very important in terms of conservation of coastal ecosystem. So we help them for sustainable farming and fishing, and about 2,000 vegetable gardens plus organic farming will be carried out in Omkar in the future. And we have a plan to go for donating 5,000 goats by 2025, and every goat will be donated to other families. So it's a self-replicable project. At the same time, we also have been doing vegetable gardens using organic. COVID-19 actually shows that we have to be self-sustainable whether we live in big towns or rural areas. So we follow the rules of nature for becoming more self-sustainable society. And our organization has received some recognition, both international and local level. And I would like to thank you all the participants for your patience. And it's my privilege to be a part of this effort from Dr. Tirunavakarasu and his team. And thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. There are a few questions.
Yes, sir.
I think which material is good for transplanting the seagrass and why?
From our experience, the material is the best suitable material is coconut ropes. When compared to bamboo, the coconut ropes provide huge area and it's very low cost. And we can do coconut rope based seagrass transplantation in large scale, and we can involve community also.
The next question is, will this bamboo frame harm the aquatic organisms?
Yeah, we actually have been testing this concept, sir. And bamboo, when compared to coconut ropes, bamboo is little bit because they have this rigid structure, and we believe that the bamboo will also be degrade. But when compared to ropes and these jute ropes, the bamboo takes more time. But they are also a biodegradable material. They will not harm, or they will not do any chemical harm to the nature. It takes more time, but we also have a plan to recover the bamboo if it is possible back and use it 2 or 3 times in order to reduce the cost further.
The next question is, according to georeference map of seagrass, in every 10 years, which particular species is most dominant in Park Bay?
So from our place, Simodacia cerulata is the dominant species. And it's like a huge battlefield underwater. If you swim in Park Bay, you can see the Simodacia cerulata is the dominant species. But we don't know what was the dominant species like 10 years before or 20 years before, and what's actually happened underwater in the last 20 or 30 years. There may be more diverse seagrass bed, which means there is no dominance, or is the dominance of such seagrass beds is changed because of influence of humans or fishing pressure. We don't know. But we believe that this Simodacia cerulata will be more dominant in the next decades also.
The next question is, various aquatic fishes and other organisms use seagrass to lay their eggs. Can they also use bamboo frames as egg laying space?
When compared to natural seagrass beds, we don't have any study to prove that the bamboo frames are more effective or equal to seagrass. And we believe that we observed that the seagrass are more natural shelter and safe space for laying eggs for seagrass associated fishes. Whatever we put in the sea, it's a foreign object. So it may be a degradable or biodegradable. The advantage of using such bamboo is that after a few months or 8 months, and they will started to slowly degrade. We don't promote bamboo as a place for egg laying for fishes and other animals.
What are the basic techniques to be known to work in a marine ecosystem?
Basic techniques to work in the marine ecosystem.
Yes, sir. What are the basic techniques for carrying out research or something like that?
சார் இவ்வளோ நாளாக அனுப்பிச்சு எனக்கு என்னன்னு நான் என்ன ரிசர்ச் பண்ணுறேன்னு புரியல. அதான் உண்மை. ஸோ என்ன டெக்னிக்ஸு, ஸோ எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச விஷயங்கள் ரொம்ப சின்னதாக இருக்குது. ஸோ அதுவும் ஒரு ஸ்பேஸ்க்குள்ளே மட்டும்தான் தெரியும். ஒரு சின்ன ஏரியாவில் தான் ஒர்க் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். ஈவன் ஆஃப்டர் decades, I feel that it's very, very, but அது கொஞ்சம், if you want to dedicate your efforts and life for conservation, you just go for it. But you have to face both positive and negative whatever you do in the fields. And I have been telling the students who visit our center, there is a Shiva path and Krishna path. So Shiva path is difficult always from Kanyakumari to Himalayas, and this Krishna path is from Dwaraka to Puri Jagannath. So if you in the Krishna path, you have to be alone and you have to travel and you have to make things different. If you are in Krishna path, it's a, you have to, you can be with the family and regular life. So this is you have to decide. It may be a research or any profession.
This is something about the types of plants which can be grown. So which plants are good for planting in a marine system? Can all types of plants be planted?
No, no terrestrial plants will grow, or you cannot plant any terrestrial plants on the shore because of the salinity. The mangroves have special adaptations for tolerating salinity. Some mangroves observe the salt, some mangroves excrete the salt, some mangroves accumulate the salt. So this adaptation is not present in the normal. We cannot plant like Urpuliamoramo, Repamoramo, we cannot plant on the shore. So only the plants that are already growing on the coastal area are suitable for planting on the coast. We don't need to plant the mangroves everywhere. We don't need to plant the seagrass everywhere. There are some ecosystem like estuary where we actually need not to plant anything.
Could you please tell something about the sea turtles in Park Bay, sir?
We have observed sea turtles when we go for diving. We have, and also we have rescued a few sea turtles, and we found hawksbill turtles and green turtles. And we actually did not do any work on sea turtle population in Park Bay. We don't have any breeding ground in Tanjore district, in also Pudukkottai district. Maybe the old fishermen said in the past years there was some turtle breeding spots here, but not now.
Uh, Before 2005, seagrass was less in Park Bay region, but now in this region, enormous seagrass has grown. What is the reason for this?
uh, I don't know where you see this information that before 2005 seagrass is more in Parkway. Uh, there has been a change, and they actually, for example, in cyclone in Kaja, north side of Parkway, they completely lost the seagrass. I mean the above ground biomass, the leaves and the shoots. Then again, they naturally grow back. So only because of this human intervention, there may be a possibility of seagrass degradation slowly, like trawlers and this pollution in the shorelines and eutrophication are the reasons for seagrass degradation.
Yes, thank you, sir. I think you have cleared almost all the doubts of our participants. I thank you very much. It's over to Tirunavukarasu now.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Balaji having accepting our invitation to deliver a lecture on our training program regarding marine biodiversity and conservation capacity building program. And we could see from his presentation what is the real conservation, practically, not theoretically. So he has emphasized the connecting livelihood and the conservation aspects, and he shared his experiences, and he carried the expeditions in his earlier days. And he has shared the community-based mangrove restoration, conservation of seagrass beds and mapping, sea turtle and marine mammals conservation, artificial reef and organic farming. It's a very good inspirational talk to the upcoming youngsters who can come over in this field in the marine conservation aspects. So it's one of the boosting talk to the youngsters mainly. Thank you, Balaji, spending valuable time for our training program. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Balaji, sir, for that inspiring presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Amid the horror and uncertainty of a global health crisis, it can be easy to forget that another worldwide disaster is unfolding, although much more slowly. The science is clear. Global warming is happening, and its dangerous effects are felt all around the globe. Humans are the cause of it, and a failure to act today will deeply affect the future of our Earth. Now, our next resource person is going to present on the climatic changes and its conservation strategies, the policies, and the issues. Here we have with us Dr. M. Anand, Assistant Professor and Head in Charge, Department of Marine and Coastal Studies, Madurai Kamarajar University, Madurai, for us to present. He'll be presenting the topic on climatic changes. Now, I request Dr. T. Madhuram to introduce our resource person, Dr. M. Anand.
Good morning to everyone, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session. On behalf of Department of Zoology, Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College, Chennai, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. M. Anand, who is working as an assistant professor and HOD in charge in Department of Marine and Coastal Studies, School of Energy and Natural Resources, Madurai Kamarajar University, Madurai. He has been awarded MDT Young Investigator Award 2012 for Scientific Investigator, Best Environmental Campaigning Award in 2015 by KTSTM Trust, Excellence and Innovation Award in 2016 by Pearl Foundation, and Dr. ABJ Abdul Kalam Best Scientist and Distinguished Fellow Award by Bose Science Society, Tamil Nadu. He has been a 12 years teaching experience, 18 years research experience, and 12 years in administration. He has internal research collaboration with various universities in different countries. He is guiding both PhD and MPhil candidates. He has published 72 research papers and 55 Gen Bank submissions. He has been given 52 invite talks and organized 13 conferences, seminars, and workshops. Now I call upon Dr. M. Anand to share his presentation with us. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for a nice introduction. And at the outset, I should thank the organizers for giving me this week to share some of our knowledge on climate change and research what we are doing in our department. And I should thank Dr. Tirunavukarasu for inviting me for this as a resource person for this training program. And I congratulate the team for choosing this topic, especially the climate change and marine biodiversity, which is a very hot topic in this scenario. And with this few words, we'll go into the topic of the lecture. Today's topic of lecture is the impact of ocean acidification and climate change on marine biodiversity. So what is marine biodiversity? I think for the past 2 days, you are into this marine biodiversity conservation. And I don't think we need to have much explanation on this. But as a sake of introduction, we need to know that biodiversity includes the coastal and marine, plant and animal species, their genetic variety, the habitats, and the ecosystems they form part of it, and the ecological process that support all of these. So you know very well, when we go to the beach, we see the ocean. It's covered of full of water, but we don't know what is underwater. So underwater is rich of plants and animals, which we will not be able to see from our naked eye from the ground on the land. But when you dive underwater, you can see the miracles of the natural ecosystem in which it has been distributed and how diverse is the marine ecosystem is. Actually, why we should concern about the marine ecosystem is very important, because it provides the society the 4 important services. That is the food security. We know that the food what we generate from the land or the protein source what we rely from the land source is not able to compensate for the growing population. So we need protein source of from the marine environment, that is food security. The second thing is the feed for livestock, and there are a lot of marine organisms which form basis of raw materials for medicine, and also the defense, natural defense, preventing our coastal states from hazards. Like you must be heard about the 2004 tsunami. That during those period, the coral reefs and mangroves, which are all rich in those regions, are highly protected rather than those areas which are not rich in coral reefs or mangrove environment. So another important aspect for marine biodiversity is in terms of its origin of life on Earth. So the life began in ocean is one theory, but this theory is well supported by 12 animal phyla are exclusively present in ocean. So in the course of evolution over a period of years, the life has been originated from the ocean, and some of the organisms could able to migrate to the land and could able to success in their life and could able to prolong or go further in the evolution. And 12 such phyla are only restricted to the marine environment, and so that these phyla are exclusively marine. And here is the list of some of the phylum which has been exclusively present in marine environment. Apart from this, in the zoology, we could able to study the different phyla, 30 to 33 phyla we study, of which only one is represented in land. Rest of the all phyla, you can find some of the representative organisms in the marine environment. So that much rich, biodiverse is a marine environment. And what are the major threats to marine environment? So 5 major threats we can forecast, or we can able to see in the marine environment. The first and foremost is climate change. So the changes to oceanic temperature, acidity, and the pattern of water movement, including current, eddies, and fronts. So all these changes are being mainly caused by increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide, as well as a damage to the ozone layer. In this presentation, we are going to discuss mainly about how this increasing carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to affect the ocean environment and further the marine ecosystem by affecting its diversity. You can find from here the temperature is being gradually increased over a period of years from 1951 baseline period to 1910 to 19. We can see the gradual increase in the temperature. And the next important issue in the marine ecosystem is overfishing. We could see the trawlers which go for trawling operations in the ocean could able to collect not only the target fishes, but also some of the juveniles which are recruiting in the bottom, sea bottom, so bottom environment. So that means some of the juveniles which are yet to get recruited or in the stage of maturity stages are also getting caught in the trawl nets and are being carried to the shore. And these organisms which are left as such in the shore, or either they go for drying as well as further to the livestock feeds. Then habitat damage. Of course, this habitat damage is again due to the bottom trawling. You could see here, this is the bottom trawling, where this bottom trawling, if it has been so intensive, it will desert that particular area, so that after trawling operation has happened, if you witness that particular area, you can see a deserted look in the sea bottom. And pollution, of course, we know that different types of pollution, point source pollution and distant source pollution. And these pollutants, especially by addition of domestic sewage waste or industrial waste, or addition of marine debris, which are generated from the land and reaching to the marine environment. You can find here the turtle is being entangling this plastic as resembling their food particle. And you can find here the direct discharge of industrial influence into the ocean, which drastically impacts the environment, especially the eutrophication impact will be there, and the oxygen depletion will be there, and there will be a sudden death of organisms in that locality. And what this climate change means, it has been defined by United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It doesn't mean a one-time or just a week or month time of alteration in the atmosphere. The climate change means the change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity. That means the human activity need not to be a direct influence. It may also be an indirect influence. And this influence alters the composition of global atmosphere. You know what is the composition of the global atmosphere? Nitrogen is largely present, and oxygen, and you have trace gases. In these trace gases, you find carbon dioxide as a major component, and this major component, carbon dioxide, is when it is maintained in the trace level, it will be a normal trace gas composition. When it by means of anthropogenic source like vehicular emission or industrial emissions, this carbon dioxide level is keep on adding into the environment, then it will directly affect the composition of global atmosphere, and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time period, not just 1 or 2 years. It should go over a comparable time period. And what does the UNESCO says about this? The facts about marine biodiversity. The ocean constitutes over 90% of habitable space. We all know that. The ocean has much higher phylogenetic diversity. This also we seen that in the slide where the life has originated from the ocean, and the most of the phyla which we study now are represented from the ocean environment. By the year 2100, without significant changes, more than half of the world's marine species may stand on the brink of extinction. So this is the warning as given by UNESCO. And the tiny phytoplankton provide 50% of the oxygen. What we assume that not just the terrestrial plants that provide us the oxygen, what we consume. The 50% of the oxygen in the atmosphere is being contributed by phytoplankton from the marine source. And the ocean acidification may threaten this plankton, which is key to the survival of larger fish. So this is where the direct links comes. So if you want oxygen, you have to keep safe the phytoplankton population. And if you want to keep safe this phytoplankton population, you should control your carbon dioxide emission. So now you should have a question that how this carbon dioxide emission is getting connected to the influence on marine biodiversity. And this is where you have a process called ocean acidification. The ocean acidification may render most regions of the ocean inhospitable to coral reefs, affecting tourism, food security, shoreline protection, and biodiversity. So what is ocean acidification and how this ocean acidification influences the climate change in marine environment? So if the concentration of the atmospheric CO2 continues to increase at the current rate, so what is the current rate? That should be our question in mind. The ocean will become corrosive to the shells of many marine organisms by the end of this century. How or if the marine organisms may adapt is not known. So if this changes is happening, if suppose the carbon dioxide emission is continuing emitted in the same rate, in the current rate, so what will happen? The ocean will be slightly moving towards acidic condition. So that's what we are going to see and how we are going to find. So as I told you, the current rate, when I said current rate, when you go back to from the 1955, you can find it was varying only to 310 ppm. But over a period of years, it has gradually increased, and now you can find the recent record of June 2020 says that 416.39 ppm. So imagine from 310 ppm, it has slowly increased and now reached up to 416.39 ppm. So what happens when this carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere? This carbon dioxide will diffuse and dissociate into the ocean waters, and it will react with H2O and forms a form of chemical reaction, that is a biogeochemical cycle, which is happening in a natural environment. That is, it will provide carbonic acid, bicarbonate, and this bicarbonate is again split into form giving carbonate ions, which is essential for the crustacean organisms for building their shells. If this process is getting hampered, then what happens? So this is a detailed mechanism of how this carbon dioxide influence the ocean chemistry and how this ocean chemistry affects the marine calcifying organisms. So this is the point where you can find the carbon dioxide is getting diffused into the marine environment. When it is getting diffused into the marine environment, it will react with the water and forms carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid is not stable. It will split into bicarbonate and hydrogen ions. And this bicarbonate again is not stable. It will again dissociate into carbonate ions and hydrogen ions. So this happens in a normal process. If suppose the carbon dioxide is keep on increasing added to the marine environment, what happens? The more number of H+ ions will be added to the marine environment. So this H+ ions, what they will do is, they will not keep these carbonate ions available for the calcifying organisms. They will again bind into with the carbonate ions to form bicarbonate. So the carbonate ions, which are essential for this calcium ions to get bind, and the biogenic formation of crustacean organisms are getting hampered. So this is where the ocean acidification comes into play. As the process denotes, as a carbon dioxide increases, bicarbonate increases, the H+ ion increases, the carbonate ion decreases, and the pH also decreases. And this process denotes is not complete acidification, and the water is moving slowly towards acidity. You know very well, the persons who are working on microbiology maybe will understand that if a magnitude 0.1 level of variation in pH will affect the physiological process of bacteria, especially in marine environment. The organisms are much dependent on the physiochemical parameters of the ocean environment. So even a 0.1 level of magnitude variations in the pH level will affect their physiology as well as their biomarker mechanisms and all. So now what is the chemistry of ocean acidification? This is what we discussed in the previous slide. The more of H+ ions will bind with these carbonate ions and will hamper the formation of calcium carbonate, and hence the availability of calcium carbonate as a biogenic source for these crustaceans are getting affected. So what is the impact of this ocean acidification? If the pH is reduced and once there is less available of carbonate ions, the coral reefs could not be able to build their shells, the crustaceans could not be able to build their shells, and these organisms are more vulnerable at the first site of this ocean acidification process. You can find here the crustaceans are at various levels occupying in the marine ecosystem, especially from the producer level in the food chain to the consumer level of the food chain. So the first and foremost group which is getting affected are crustaceans, and these crustaceans are very important in terms of their protein source. As I told you before, the growing population need much of seafood for their support, and subsequently when there is a loss of these crustaceans, we have a lot of pressure from the marine environment to compensate this protein source. And of course, the existing coral reefs, the existing hard shells, or existing the bivalves, all these are getting corroded. So this may also happen. It is not just the available calcium carbonate only affected. Even already formed exoskeleton are getting corroded so that they become thin shelling. So thin shelling will be the main problem for the organisms which are currently present in the marine environment. And of course, various research has reported that ocean acidification will affect the predicted and negative effects on ocean acidification includes calcification, metabolism, and the fertility of the organism, the survival rate of the organism, and of course, the growth is also getting hampered by ocean acidification. And this is some of the direct and indirect effects. When you find the direct effects, as I told you, it is directly affecting the calcification process, and it directly affects the physiology, reproduction, growth of the organisms. And how does this indirectly affect the organisms? As I told you, the community process, the primary producer level, if suppose the organism is getting affected, the secondary level organism which is depend on these primary producers are getting affected. And of course, the biogeochemical cycle. When there is an imbalance in the availability of carbonate ions, there will be a disturbance in the biogeochemical cycle. And of course, it will lead to the complex hindrance in the food web. And this is a prediction. At the current average level pH, we have 8.1. In future, it may go even 7.9 or 8 or something like that. As the pH is getting reduced, you can find some species in the food web benefit while others are declined. So there will be a dominance of one group, and maybe some of the groups may getting extinct, or we may face a problem that these particular organisms are extinct. What are all the human impacts? We can't say that this is just we will be affecting this increase in carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. Is not just only affecting the marine environment in terms of ocean acidification. It also affects human. How? As I told you, the first and foremost is a community process. As the process in the food chain or food web is affected, we are mainly depend on marine source for their protein supplement. So that is a big challenge human have to face. And again, the coastal protection. As I told you, if suppose the coral reefs are getting affected and coral reefs are endangered, we will be finding a lot of problems in terms of coastal sea erosion, sea level rise, or these sort of problems will happen in the near coastal regions. And of course, the climatic regulations, when there is an imbalance in the biogeochemical cycle, we will face a lot of climate imbalance, so that extreme drought and extreme cyclone or these type of natural calamities we may experience. And what are the things you should know about the ocean acidification? And currently, this is the current rate of acidification is over 10 times faster than any time. And that means the industrialization process is happening in a larger cycle, and the vehicular emission, vehicle emission is also adding fuel to this. And 40% increase in the atmospheric carbon dioxide level is also recorded. And the projected increase in ocean acidity by 2100 compared with pre-industrial level, if high CO2 emission continues, is 8.5. That is called representative concentration pathway. So most of the leaders, global leaders, are now trying to reduce the carbon dioxide level or emission. You would have read from most of the IPCC meeting and all, most of the leaders are much committed to reduce their CO2 emission in their own country. Even India is also committed as one of the major signatory in that particular commitment. And this is again the same flow process what we have seen now. Burning fossil fuel will adding carbon dioxide emission in the atmosphere, and this induces climate change and directly influencing the ocean chemistry, and various other changes in the ocean ecosystem happens, that reduced shell, changes in assembly of the organisms, biodiversity loss, changes in biogas production in the oceans and feedback to the climate. And this in turn affects the socio-economic changes as well as the policy options on the earth. And what is the basic research is happening in ocean acidification? Actually, this ocean acidification is a recent study for the past 20 to 30 years worldwide. Here, normally lab-based experiments has been started early, but now the field observations is also going on, where you can find the tipping points. That means in the on-site observations, you can find the ecosystem will reach a tipping point. Until it reaches the tipping point, the ecosystem could be able to buffer or balance any of the changes in the ecosystem. So once it reaches the tipping point is the point at the point which makes the biodiversity could not able to revert back to the normal ecosystem. So once it is reached, it is very difficult for the system to correct itself to come back to the normal situation. So that area is much concentrated. Where is the tipping point for ocean acidification, and how this tipping point can be derived is a main area of research now. So normally this ocean acidification experiment range from microcosm experiment or bottled experiment to mesocosm experiment, then field experiment and field observation. So right now the bottled experiment and microcosm experiments are in a controlled condition. We could able to vary the CO2 level concentrations, thereby we monitor the pH of the water, and we could able to see what way the variations impact the calcifying organisms or whatever be the organisms we are studying in the lab. The mesocosm and field experiments are little expensive and partly under our control. Some of the the pH variations will be under our control, whereas the other physiochemical parameters are not under our control. And this particular area of research is much important for getting more of field observation experiments. And this is again in situ type of experiments where we can go into the field and we set up a monitoring system so that we can find how the organisms could be able to, we are not changing any of the pH variations. Only we are going to observe what are the areas are more susceptible for pH fluctuations. Those areas we monitor regularly and find how the changes is happening. So in our department, we are focusing on calcification impact, oxidative stress impact, and the tissue damage on various organisms by microcosm experiments. And we have studied Donax, Faba, the bivalve shells, then other species of Donax cuneatus, Modulus, Portunus, Pentaceraster, and Selmacis. So these are the study organisms we have carried out some of the microcosm experiments in our lab. And we found a lot of variations in terms of their tissue damage. The biomarker response are evident that even 0.2, 1 or 0.1 or 0.2 level of pH variations have negative impact on these organisms. And what this policy level makers view on this ocean acidification. And this particular process is much talked in various international forum. You can find the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network is actively working on this. And this is called Go On Output, and they've been monitoring regularly in association with ICC, IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and you can find IOC is also a part of it. And this particular process of ocean acidification, how it is going to forecast in the future, is very closely monitored by these organizations. So that much awareness is being created about this ocean acidification process at the global level. And what is the science to policy in these experiments? Over a long-term oceanographic observation of experiments, you can find at the policy level, if you do a long-term observation, as I told you, the field observation of experiments, you can find how these ocean health stressors getting affected over the past scenario as well as in the future scenario. We can predict some of the predict modeling systems we can do. And at the laboratory level experiments, we can find how economically and ecologically important species are getting immediately impact, and these informations we can collect. And the biodiversity and the pollution monitoring and research. And at this level, you can find how this community level changes is happening can be predicted, and the integration and coordination. And as you know, as you all know very well, this ocean acidification is not just a one-time global impact, but this is mostly of regional impact. If suppose in an industrial active area, there is a lot of CO2 emission. In that particular area, you can identify some of these changes in the ocean environment. But as such, at a one time in global, it is not so evident. But as a regional level, it should be very important to monitor. And what the recent study says in the Nature climate change report says that is, the ocean acidification is a slow moving process. I mean, you can, as I told you, it is not a sudden change where you can find that an immediate impact, but it is a slow changing process. You may not be evidently saying that this organism is of sudden death or something like that, but the organism is slowly getting affected in terms of their negative physiological changes. If and this ocean acidification as being very slow changes is being affecting organisms of more sessile organisms, which could not able to move suddenly from that particular environment to counteract that particular changes. So in that case, you know that bivalves, gastropods, and of course the coral reefs are much prone to sensitive or much prone to this particular changes. And in what way we are responsible for this? We should know that. Actually, we know that now climate change is happening. The main culprit is the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And this emission of carbon dioxide, at sometimes we may feel in land that more heat or more suffocation or something like that. But we may not be aware that this particular emission of carbon dioxide is also affecting the marine environment, the organisms in the marine environment. So a small changes in our lifestyle, that means reducing, how we can reduce the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, could be able to save this biodiversity in the marine environment. This is what you are not directly saving the marine environment, but small changes what we are making in your lifestyle could be able to reduce your contribution of CO2 emission to the atmosphere. That in turn, over a period of long run, we can able to save marine biodiversity. So here I listed some 7 steps that we could be able to do within our limits. Change your bulbs at home. Now we are changing from incandescent, that filament type of bulbs, to CFL or LED bulbs for efficient lighting, so that we can reduce the CO2 emissions. Then drive less. If suppose you've been asked to go for shopping nearby, we used to take bike, or even you go by car. We can reduce that, use bicycles. Wherever you could be able to go by walk or by foot. I think this corona period has given us a lot of lessons, that use your bicycle, use your shops nearby, so that you go by walk and purchase whatever you want to your home. So avoid using vehicles at the maximum possible. Keep your tire inflated. So this is a very common mistake we used to do. When we see some of the peoples will be checking their air only monthly once, or 2 weeks once, or whatever it may be. But the regular checking of your tire inflation will also help you to increase your fuel efficiency, so that in one way we are able to control our CO2 emission, and in other way it is also a better way of maintaining your vehicles. And use solar energy. So nowadays a lot of incentives has been offered from the government of India to go for solar energy. In that sense, this is an important point I would like to highlight here. Indian government is promoting that if you could able to install solar power in your home, in a rooftop, the amount of solar energy or power generated which has been used by your home, the excess power can be sent to the grid. So whatever the excess power that been sent to the grid will be paid in terms of money to you by value of your electricity bill. So that I've seen many of the peoples could able to cut down their electricity bills by adapting this mechanism. And turn off electronic devices. So most of us not aware that there is a phantom load. That is, phantom load is nothing but if you keep on plugged your charger or your television after watching overnight, it has been plugged in your electric device. It will be called phantom load. That means the electricity will be discharging in that particular plug point. So it is always better you unplug whenever you are not using these mobile chargers or your electronic devices, whatever it may be. Then reuse and recycle. So this is very important, that you should able to reuse whatever be the plastic materials that is being generated at home, and whatever be the paper materials or whatever may be the things being added to the trash, we could able to reuse or recycle, so that we could able to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. And for this we have 8 steps. That means rethink of any materials you are going to buy. Then if that is not environment friendly, refuse, don't use that. And maximum possible reduce using those things. If at all, at any cases, if you wanted to use that, maximum possible you make reuse of those things and recycle those things what essentially you've been using, and replace with one which is not environmental friendly. So this is what I just wanted to share with you. So I think we have come to the end of this the session. We have a long way to go. By 2050, India is committed to reduce 2 degrees Celsius by temperature. So for that, we should march a long way by adapting all these mechanisms, so that we take all our responsibility in our hand to reduce carbon dioxide emission and save marine environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a wonderful presentation on the climatic changes and its effect, and what are the measures to combat it. We have a few questions from a participant, sir.
Yeah, please.
Do you think that more seagrass propagation would minimize climatic changes to some extent?
Yeah, seagrass plantation will be definitely buffer this climate change process. Why? Because I'm telling you is this emission of carbon dioxide in one way is benefiting the photosynthetic organisms. So you all know the seaweeds and seagrasses flourish in photosynthesis. So this carbon dioxide wherever is rich, this carbon dioxide will benefit the phytoplanktons and especially the vegetative propagation. So the seaweeds and seagrasses, if we plant more near the coastal areas, in one way we can reduce this increasing ocean acidity in these areas.
This is with reference to another question on bisphenol A is an important chemical released by plastics. Can they have any direct effect on the development of shells in aquatic organisms?
Please come again, sir.
Bisphenol A is an important chemical released by the plastics. Will they have any direct effect on the shell development of the, I think, molluscans you are referring?
Yeah, actually, we have not studied in this particular chemical what has been mentioned here, but definitely any of these chemicals are leach out from the plastic waste will affect the physiology of the organisms in terms of not the shell thinning or something like that, but their physiology or reproductive behavior may get affected.
Is ocean acidification a reason for coral bleaching?
Coral bleaching, we have a lot of other stress also is there, especially the temperature increase. Especially those who are working in coral environment may be very clear that every summer we can find coral bleaching happening in the locality. But ocean acidification is also another stressor for coral bleaching added to the increase in temperature.
Will there be any loss of algae, specifically zooxanthellae, because of this acidification process?
Yeah, field observations are going on, but some research are into this particular process, especially how this coral symbiotic association is getting affected by ocean acidification. So as such, there is not big evidence on this, but researchers are going on that pH changes will affect the zooxanthellae association.
How can jellyfish blooming be solved, sir?
Jellyfish, actually jellyfish blooming is again a temperature connected phenomenon. So you can find the water temperature decides the blooming of jellyfish. So again, I'm telling you, whenever there is a control in the local environment of the emission of carbon dioxide, then we could be able to control this jellyfish population or blooming in that particular locality. But otherwise, there is no mechanism of as such to control the blooming of jellyfish. Only thing is we should know the long-term monitoring of physiochemical parameters in that area so that we can control by any precautionary measures.
There is one more question on parasites. Does ocean acidification affect the endo and ectoparasites of marine fishes in terms of population dynamics?
Yeah, of course, it is there. Even the fish assemblage is also getting affected. We have studied how the coral reef fishes are oriented or disoriented towards this ocean acidification process. We find that coralline fishes, I mean, the fishes which are associated with coral reef areas are much get affected. And as such, parasites we have not studied so far. But of course, even as I told you, if there is small changes in the local environment, the sessile and sedentary organisms are more affected, whereas the fishes could able to relocate that area. So they can move away from that particular environment if it is not so conducive or optimum. So in that way, fishes could able to somehow get away or escape from this particular changes in the ocean acidity by changing their migrating pattern or their breeding environment.
Then the next question is there any research studies going on regarding the coral reef ecosystems and ocean acidification?
Yeah, there are a lot of research is going on, especially even in our lab, we are doing the field monitoring of aragonite saturation state. In one way, we can monitor the health of this ocean in terms of ocean acidity by monitoring calcite and aragonite state in the field observations. So in that case, if the aragonite saturation state is gradually reducing in an environment, then it is affecting the coral reefs. We are onto this study in the Gulf of Mannar area.
How do water sports and recreational activities affect the water quality parameters of the marine environment?
Water recreation, unless until
Specifically,
people who are going for these recreation activities have concern for the ocean environment, there is no problem. If the people has been allowed to go for recreation with some regulations, and even the person who are going for these recreations with concern for the marine environment, of course there won't be any problem. When we go for diving or scuba diving or skin diving, we used to insist the same to our students, not to stab on the coral reefs or any such organisms which have been in the benthic or something like that. So when you have a concern for the marine environment, those who are going for this tourism should also have that concern in their mind.
does river rafting affect the aquatic flora and fauna?
River
rafting.
River rafting.
River rafting. All this.
River rafting. No idea, sir. No idea. I have not come across this.
I think, thank you, sir. I think you have
Yeah.
answered all the questions of our participants. Thank you so much for your nice
Thank
presentation.
you.
Now,
Thank you so much.
Dr. sir.
I would like to thank Dr. M. Anand sir from MKU having accepting our invitation to deliver lecture on ocean acidification and impacts on biodiversity in the juncture of our 3 days national capacity building training on marine biodiversity and its conservation. Sir has emphasized the carbon cycle and chemistry, crustacean impacts, and the biology of ocean acidification, human impacts, how science to policy the implications and steps to be taken for save energy. And many aspects he has covered. I think I hope many of the participants have gained the knowledge on ocean acidification and how the impacts on marine biodiversity. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you once again being a part of our program.
Thank you, Dhuru. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We now move on to the last session of this 3-day national training program on marine biodiversity and its conservation. Human development has a number of different effects on the marine environment. Marine life is being threatened by a variety of human activities that result in habitat loss, unsustainable fishing, and water pollution, finally contributing to the global climatic changes. The good news is that there are a number of steps we can take every day to help marine life recover, thrive, protect our ocean for future generations, and prevent the vulnerability of marine animal population from its extinction. Now here we have with us an eminent speaker, Dr. Deepak Samuel, Scientist E, National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climatic Changes, Chennai, who is going to deliver on the marine endangered species. I now request Dr. T. Madhuram, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College, to introduce our resource person, Dr. Deepak Samuel. Over to Dr. Madhuram.
A warm welcome you all to the next session of this day. It is a great honor for me to introduce our speaker, Dr. Deepak Samuel. He had done his PhD degree in marine biology. He has worked in various institutions. At present, he works as a scientist and project lead in charge, Conservation of Coastal and Marine Resource Division, National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, Government of India, Anna University Campus, Chennai. He has honored many awards for his research work and paper presentation. He is also guiding PhD candidates. He has given more than 80 invited talks and has also attended more than 45 seminars, symposium, and conferences. He is a journal reviewer of many journals. Now I call upon Dr. Deepak Samuel to share his presentation with us. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Introducing our resources of the day.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, Deepak, sir.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Right. Very good morning to all of you, and it's a pleasure and privilege for me to be a part of this 3-day program. And I see through the feedback and the kind of questions were answered by, asked and answered by the resource persons was fabulous. It was personally a good learning experience for me also. And first of all, I would like to thank my classmate and my very good friend, Dr. Ambedkar. We studied MSc together, and I mean, from there, we've been friends for more than 25 years, and it's ongoing friendship. And also many of my seniors. It's also good to see that Dr. Anand is there. Okay, Anand Tirunagaras and myself, we worked in the same department at Madras Christian College when we were freshers, when we were into our kind of first phase of our life. And also Balaji from Omkar Foundation, our junior, and tremendous work, Balaji. I would like to personally congratulate you for the efforts taken at the Parkway area. Okay, having said that, ma'am, Mother ma'am, thank you for introducing and for the kind words used. The topic that I'm going to speak today is going to be on marine endangered species. Okay, just let me know whether you're able to see my slide.
Deepak, sir?
Yes.
Your slide?
Can you see my slide?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, fine, right. So, though the topic is on marine endangered species, I would like to mostly reflect on what are the policies, what are the laws, what are the regulations, what kind of conservation management assets we have in the country, and how it is internationally and nationally formulated for various purposes. Okay. Any guess on what animal you see on the screen? Okay, this is an invertebrate, and this is called as the horseshoe crab. The horseshoe crabs, though the name is horseshoe, they are a crab, they are not crabs. Crabs come under crustacea, these come under arachnida. Okay, arachnida is a group which involves scorpions. And the scorpions are identified with their whip at the back. And if you see this horseshoe crabs, they have a long telson. If you can follow my cursor, you can see the telson is buried, two telsons are there. So these are the characteristic feature that has put them in arachnids. Okay, now why I'm talking about this species of horseshoe crab is that this is vulnerable for exploitation and vulnerable for their population to drastically come down in the wild. The beauty is that this particular species is found only in 3 states of India, north of Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, and West Bengal. We have 2 species in India, and both of them are in conditions where you see that they are coming as bycatch in nets. And it is also technically used as a oil for massage in terms of traditional medicine. So there is a value for commercial exploitation. It has been commercially exploited, and you see there is an importance now for it to be conserved and protected. So recently, just a few years back, this particular species was brought into the Wildlife Protection Act of India of 1972 under Schedule 4, which means they are available in the wild in plenty, but there should be a proper check how they are harvested, how bycatches come, and how they are preserved for the future generations. We might probably ask, what is the role, what is the use of protecting this animal? There is no meat in it for consumption, but it has got something called as a blue blood. Now, blue blood is extracted many countries, as in the case of USA, where it is used for many anti-cancer studies and for cancer treatments. So it's an asset that we have these 2 species. The 2 species of them available in our country. Having said that, this is my title. As I told you, I will not be focusing more on the endangered species. I'll be now and then giving you images of marine species which are endangered or in the categories of IUCN, different levels. But I will be focusing on how conservation plays a very important role. What you see here is the olive ridley, Lepidocheilus olivaceae, a very common turtle that is found nesting all over the country and in the mainland, very specifically in the mainland, because we see leatherbacks nesting and Andaman Nicobar group, and then you see green and hawksbills, some part of the mainland, and also plenty of green turtles in Lakshadweep Islands. So this is again a Schedule 1 species. We have 5 species of them under the turtle category of the reptiles, and all 5 are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. And this is an image taken at Gahirmada, and Gahirmada is the single biggest rookery in the world. And here there is a large number of population of turtles that come every year, female turtles very specifically. They come and lay their eggs and make sure that the population is enhanced in the wild naturally. Unfortunately, due to the severe fishing activities, nets that are used, as mentioned by my previous speakers, they have been caught. And as you know, reptiles are air breathers. They have to come to the surface of the water, breathe, and then go down, like whales, like sea snakes, and all of the iguanas, all the reptiles have to, marine reptiles have to come on top, breathe, and go down. So when the net entangles them, they are drowned, like we drowning in the water. They also drown in the water and die. So few minutes are enough for us to keep it under the water and completely kill it. So we have a very big threat. And also the nesting grounds are threatened because of erosion, because of habitat loss, because of pollution, because of light pollution, and so on. So every group is considered to be very important when ecologically studying their importance and what kind of role they play in terms of economic evaluation and what kind of results they give in terms of economy for the country. So basically, there's always a conflict between science, policy, and law in biodiversity conservation. We have a National Biodiversity Authority which plays a very important role. I'll come to it a little later. But what is most important is that all three has to be bridged together. So we are in a generation, we are in a decade where we see that whatever science we have done in the past and we are doing right now is going to come into the policy, and that is going to be helpful in creation of a law. And the policy will keep changing based on the population increase or population decrease. And this can be done by the park managers or by the respective state forest department or by the environment department to make sure that science is always there, not blindly conserving some group, blindly conserving area, but to have science driving the entire force so that the law can be framed and can be technically competent with other policies available in the world. So what we talk about in science is purely, we do a lot of research on biodiversity. There are lots of people working on biodiversity all over the country. Taxonomy, a lot of taxonomy. The problem is that all cannot be taxonomist. Taxonomy is it's an art by itself. The science by itself. It is a kind of what you kind of it is not an talent that you kind of, it's inborn, the talent that you develop. So taxonomy is a very challenging subject, and we have very poor number of taxonomies distributed throughout the world. Even in India, very few are good taxonomists, and we require a lot of taxonomy. So our ancient history, our entire background of science in form of taxonomy is very good in terms of India. You won't believe today the world is talking about corals, but the first coral reef conference for the world happened in Crusade Island in the Gulf of Mannar way back in 60s. That's the kind of richness capacity we had those days. But now slowly, because of this demand for papers to be published immediately, demands for citation factors, demands for impact factors, demand for job opportunities, we see that predatory journals have come up and we start publishing predatory journals, and unfortunately it has led to poor science. So taxonomy is something very important, especially when it's biodiversity conservation. And this is the base for any biodiversity conservation driven act. Right? And also in ecology, what happens if the animal is there in a particular habitat or a niche? If it's not there, what's going to happen, and so on. So that's basically the science that we do. Second thing is that we have something called the policy. So there are a lot of policies, the earliest being the one in 1988, the National Forest Policy, where a lot of inputs were given to protect the forests of the country, to make sure that the wildlife associated with it is undisturbed. Whereas there is scope given for the communities that live in the fringe or the periphery, and they can go and harvest sustainably, and they can even hunt to a certain level. But because of poaching happened, they have now strictened it so much that now poaching is totally stopped in forest areas. Then we have the National Conservation Strategy Policy and Science Statement of Environment and Development in 1992. Then we had the National Environmental Policy in 2006. Then the National NBA Action Plan in 2008. Then a specific plan on marine fisheries in 2007, led by Meena Kumari Committee. Right? So these are some of the policies that happen. What are the laws that we have? The most strong and stringent law that we have in the country is the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. And in this Wildlife Protection Act, we have 4 categories: Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3, Schedule 4. So based on the sensitivity, based on the population, based on the habitat loss, there is a lot of science-driven act that is taking place to make sure that these animals, the status of the animals, and then they put them under the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for example, if we say Schedule 1, Schedule 1 contains all animals or plants that require very important immediate mitigation, very important immediate decisions to be taken to protect it. Whereas Schedule 4, we can say it's available in plenty, but it should be maintained or conserved or protected so that there is no future loss. So that's how the gradient of the laws and regulations takes place in India. And then we have the Environmental Protection Act 1986. We have Wetlands Conservation Management Rules in 2010, which was modified in 2017. And because of this 2017 management rules, we said every state has to have its own wetland authority. The wetland authorities are being formed in some states and some states being formed. But the most important is now the coastal is the CRZ notification or the coastal regulations of notification. So our institute where I work right now, we are the ones dealing with the CRZ 2019 notification. I'll be doing a little bit about in detail about this little later. And then we also the island coastal regulations, ICRZ. Okay, this is also there. And then of course we have the Biological Diversity Act. Now we will try to dissect every law and policy available and see what's present for us. Okay, so why should India have this kind of protection measures? Why should India have this kind of conservation efforts? Why the community has to participate? Why involve NGOs and CPOs? Why school children are involved? Why academicians are brought? Why researchers are brought inside? It's a question that they ask because we as a country are one of the mega biodiverse country in the world in terms of our diversity of life that we have in land, plant, animal, also in water and underwater. That's the kind of beauty that we have in our country. And we are also party to the IG biodiversity targets. And we have a national biodiversity target by 2020, which means that 10% of the coastal and marine areas. I'm going to talk in perspective of the coastal and marine area. So I will be touching upon the terrestrial area, but what is most important as a marine biologist, as a researcher on the marine side, is that I'll be focusing mostly on the coastal and the marine area. So by 2020, which is this year, we should have had at least 10% of coastal areas that have to be brought under the conservation as conservation areas. So we saw that in a few years back when we worked on the calculations, how much information we have based on reports given by Wildlife Institute India, the MPAs, and so on. Okay, we see that we have a good number of marine protected areas in the country, amounting to close to 10,000 square kilometers. And then we have strong protected network of 5.93% of this, and 7.9% of territorial sea with the 12 nautical miles that extends into the ocean area. Okay, so this is the kind of status of protected areas there, but still this will not all put together suffice the target that we have as 10% for the commitment that we have towards the IG biodiversity targets, the sustainable development goals, and so on. What is there, right? We have goal number 14, which is life underwater. All this has to come into play. Okay, so we still have a little less, probably close to 7 to 8%. We are not very sure because it is not one institution's work. It's a combination from the Environment Department, Wildlife Institute of India, and many other big institutions that work all on the coast. So all have to come together again and see how best we can make sure that the 2020 target is met. And what are the current strategies we have? As I told you, the major things are the three important laws for protection, for conservation that we have is the Wildlife Protection Act, Environment Protection Act, and the BD Act, or the Biological Diversity Act. These three are big pillars, the three pillars of conservation as far as India is concerned. Okay, so if you see that in the Wildlife Protection Act, there are two kinds of conservation. One is spatial conservation. Spatial, what I mean is that we have the area demarcated and a particular title is given. What kind of title? A national park. It can be a regular national park or a marine national park. Then you have a sanctuary, a wildlife sanctuary or a regular sanctuary. Then a conservation reserve and a community reserve. So these are all under the spatial because they have a very specific boundary. And if you see all these places, we have Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, for example, Vedannagal Bird Sanctuary, they have boundaries. So these boundaries give a very clear area by which the department or the people involved in protection are able to take strict action against people who do poaching or into some illegal activity with wildlife trade. And the second thing is that species conservation measure, where we talk about the particular species. That's called the schedule, the Wildlife Protection Act schedule species, where 1 to 4 I explained to you. You see that we have some sharks available, some fish, okay, the giant grouper, Epinephrus lanceolatus, that is under Schedule 1. Then we have about 26 species of mollusks that is in Schedule 1, all corals at Schedule number 1. And in 4, you see I show horseshoe crab is there, and there are certain reptiles that are found in Schedule 4, which are found living in the coastal area. If I say coast, you should not restrict just with water. There are also some areas, there are forests, littoral forests adjacent to the coast, beyond the mangroves, beyond the mudflats, beyond salt marsh vegetation. These are also very important to be noted and studied in terms of schedules. Okay, so this is based on species conservation. In terms of the Environmental Protection Act, many concepts came. For example, again, these are spatial markers, okay, ESZs. Okay, these are the ones called ecologically sensitive zones. If you remember very well, there was a lot of committees that were formed. The Russian Guards, we had a committee, and a lot of conservation efforts were taken. A lot of stakeholder meetings happened, and we have to see the forest area, the species inside, the community living close in terms with them, and the policy, the NGOs, government, protection agents all together. It has to be a complete platter of people. Stakeholders together to carry out successfully any kind of conservation measure. So slowly India is now woke up from the sleep that they had, the slumber that they had, and everything is now based on community with help of forest department. Second thing is the ESA, ecological sensitive areas, where our institution, our team was able to do the entire ESA for the country, and the draft has been submitted, and a lot of spatial mapping, its demarcation and delineation was carried out. And I'll be talking about this a little later. And then also we have the EFA, ecologically fragile areas, okay? And these areas is Dahanu in, one case is Dahanu in Maharashtra, where the thermal plants were supposed to come, and then they found how fragile the ecosystem was, and then it was the entire scrapped, the entire project was scrapped. Then the wetlands conservation management rules, and of course the CRZ1 and ICRZ1, which I'll be speaking a little later. And then the Biological Act. You see that in terms of spatial, again, based on area, you see the biological heritage sites are the priority for BDA, and in species, various regulatory provisions and institutional mechanisms, which means that if traditionally some area has been harvested for some kind of a plant for medicinal purposes, then some kind of access to benefit should be given to the communities. It's called access to benefit sharing, or ABS. That kind of activity is taken by the BDA. So these are three big pillars in terms of India's conservation laws and policy: Wildlife Protection Act, Environment Protection Act, and the BDA Act of 2002. Moving on, we did three important studies. One was on demarcating the ecological sensitive areas for conservation all over the country, including Lakshadweep and Andaman Islands. And then we had the high stress zones. Of course, this is still under progress. We are yet to finish it. And the CVC, critically vulnerable coastal area, which is a community-based resource management. So these three we'll be seeing. Primarily, we'll look into the ESA first. Okay. So if we read the CRZ 2019 notification, 2011 was the notification with listing this A2K areas, ESAs. Okay. And then 2019, some amendments came and it was modified. So you see the A2K contains mangroves, coral reefs, sand dunes, mudflats, MPAs that covers biosphere reserves, reserve forests, salt marshes, turtle nesting ground, horseshoe crab habitats, seagrass beds, nesting grounds of birds, and areas and structures of archaeological importance and heritage sites. So this is the, we popularly call it as A2K of the CRZ1 ecologically sensitive areas. Now going into that one by one, mangroves, corals, seagrass, salt marsh are together called as ecosystems, because they are large, they are vast, and they support lots of goods and services, and they support lots and lots of nursery and breeding grounds for very unique species of invertebrates and vertebrates, including polygate worms, including growing forms, including cochleophorids and rhodolarians and so on, radiolarians and so on. Okay, so they are very, very important. So these four are considered as the ecosystems. Whereas the bird nesting sites, turtle nesting sites, are the horseshoe crab habitat. Remember, I introduced the horseshoe crab in the beginning, right? So these three areas, wherever identified the country, are termed as habitats. So this is the second category we have among the A2K and the ecologically sensitive areas of the CRZ 2019 notification. And then third category is that we have something called the geomorphological features, which means naturally Earth is formed with a lot of physical processes, wind, tides, wave, and so on. Okay, so the sand dunes and the mud flats are very, very important geomorphic features because they play a very, very vital role. If I have to talk about it, maybe one day will not be sufficient. That much of information is available in terms of their goods and services. And of course, finally, the other categories, heritage sites and archaeological site, that is very important in terms of ecological sensitive areas. So why we had to demarcate this A2K and why we had to study in detail was purely because they are natural protectors from any kind of natural disasters like tsunamis, like storm surges, like erosion, like coastal felling, and so on, right? And also they provide a very important livelihood source for the dependent fishing communities. And thirdly, they are very unique habitats. Certain fishes, certain organisms, certain animals will live only in certain pockets. This is again a very important phenomenon that we see studying on the ESAs. The second important thing is the CVCA, or the critically vulnerable coastal area. So the CRZ 2019 notification, from the 2011 notification, we can see there are 12 sites identified in the country where the community has to be a part in conservation. Okay, I told you that now without the community involvement, without the CBO or NGOs involvement, no program will be successful because they know the ground reality. Forest Department has got the power to make sure that the entire community depends on the resource. At the same time, they also protect and conserve it with the help from the Forest Department. That's the kind of approach that we're going to have in the coming days. It's called as community-based or participatory. Balaji in his first talk was very clearly mentioning how participatory approaches work out, where the community is involved in mangrove plantation, in taking the field surveys, and so on, and children being educated in terms of environmental education. So these are all very important, kind of approach. These are very important methods by which we can see that communities can help in conservation. So the highlights of this is that there are 12 sites. You can see from, this is Gulf of Kutch and Gulf of 2 in Gujarat, 2 in Maharashtra, Aksharatnagari in Malvan, one in Maharashtra, and Karwar is one. Then we have Kundapur, and then we have Yamuna in Kerala, Gulf of Tamil Nadu, Krishna and Godavari, in Andhra Pradesh, Bhitarkanika in Odisha, and Sundarbans in West Bengal. So all these have been identified as critically vulnerable coastal areas, the CVCA. So we, in our exercise, we studied, we were able to do surveys for 730 coastal villages. Imagine the work that has gone in the last 3 years for us. And we have surveyed more than 14,000 households for complete data for the first time in the country with tab based. Everything will enter the tab, and the enumerators can just press the enter and come to our server, and immediately we can do the graphing or whatever parameter we're going to call out, can call out very easily. With along with 6 collaborating institutes like CMFRI, we had CE, Center for Environment Education, so many other big institutions known in the country where we are all involved. And out of this, each CVCA site will have more than 1 or 3 resource areas. So based on that, from the 12 sites, we have 63 resource areas identified. So I will not go into detail because this again will take 1 day for me to discuss in detail, right? So we first saw the policies, the laws and science that is involved in terms of initiating any conservation practice. Secondly, we saw that under CRZ 2019 notification, we have the ecological sensitive areas, highly stressed zones, and critically vulnerable coastal area. Now we are going to go into some of the important mechanisms by which these are terms, broad terms, which is internationally used for conservation and for protection. Some are very specific to India, some are specific to international level. It's all the common, okay? Right, the first thing is biosphere reserves. Now, biosphere reserves are, it's from a program under UNESCO called the MAB, or Man and Biosphere Program. And it's right from 1971 it started. And the first biosphere reserve in the country, the marine biosphere reserve, that happened was Gulf of Mannar way back in the 1980s. And then you see that there are many more. The Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is one example. Okay, so what image you see is the shot from Pamban Bridge, where you can see all the traditional vallams, the larger vallams are seen. Vallams are country boats that are used by the fishermen of Rameshwaram, Ramanathapuram district, even Tuticorin district, that to go into shallow waters, say up to 8-10 kilometers into the ocean, to catch their regular fish catch using different kinds of traditional nets and come back. So this is just an anchoring of the boats viewed from the bridge of Pamban, just before you enter Pamban Bridge, and from the Pamban Bridge when you enter Rameshwaram Island. Okay, so this Man and Biosphere Program is very important because it conserves the entire, it's just huge. Now, in the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve, for example, is 10,500 square kilometers in terms of area, and within that there is a marine national park with the 13 islands, and 2 of them have sunk, right? And so these islands are also present, right? So you see that there is a lot of importance in terms of the Gulf of Mannar biodiversity, because there is a lot of work done. I worked in Gulf of Mannar with the United Nations Development Program for almost 3.5 years, and we worked with many departments there, and we found that the number of species is more than 4,000 just in the Gulf of Mannar area. So that shows the biodiversity richness, and this is high than any other marine centers in the country. So this is the Biosphere Reserve Program that we have in India, and the best example, the marine area, is the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere. We also have Nicobar, we have in Andaman also. There are many other terrestrial ones, but noteworthy to mention are the biosphere reserves in the marine area. And the second thing that we have is key biodiversity areas. Now, these will not be very big in size, but they are small but very specific, but they are key, which means that it's an umbrella term. The definition goes like this: an umbrella term used to include areas that contribute to global persistence of biodiversity. There are certain groups of animals. It's got a range. Okay, for example, tigers. We have Indian tigers. We have the Sundarban tigers. We have the Sumatra tiger. We have the snow tiger. Right? So different Siberian tigers. The different kinds of tigers which have adapted, different lineages which are adapted. But these are all key biodiversity areas. Tiger is protected, right? But these are key biodiversity areas identified. Like that, it has to be applied. And there are lots of KBS identified in India. Of course, KBS are just listed. We did not come across, because the ESA, what we have done is now superriding everything. It gives an overall view of a broad scale conservation approach, and it helps in the complete protection and management of the biodiversity areas. So KBS are one example, and there are 11 criteria, which includes threatened biodiversity. Okay, the 5 broad categories here are the threatened biodiversity, geographically restricted biodiversity, ecological integrity. I told you, tiger can be there. It's found in many countries, but they are very specific. Indian tigers, no, the one you find in Gulf, the Ranthambore and Kanha and Mudumalai, that's different. The one you find in Sundarbans, there is some kind of genetic variation. Then the Sumatran tigers, then the tigers that you find in Siberian tigers, little bigger ones. So there's a lot of change. Okay, so that is called as the geographically restricted biodiversity. Then ecological integrity, biological process, and irreplaceability. If the animal goes from there, what will happen? The entire system will collapse, right? It's called a single approach, where you see that you take the top carnivore and start protecting the entire ecosystem. So this is a very important in terms of key biodiversity areas. Okay, and the next one is ICMBAs, important coastal and marine areas. Okay, biodiversity area. I missed the biodiversity there. It's ICMBA, important coastal and marine biodiversity areas. This was done by the Wildlife Institute of India. Again, Dr. Shivakumar was mentioned. It's a big team when Dr. B.C. Chowdhury was there as the lead, and they did an excellent work of identify ICMBAs. So when we did the ecological sensitive area exercise, we took all this information and then developed our layers on top, bringing in KBAs, ICMBAs, IBA, everything together so that it can be a robust area that we demarcate and delineate in terms of conservation practices. So this is again, this ICMBAs was based on target number 6 of Aichi Biodiversity target and 11 to conserve substantial postal. That's what I told in 2020. We see that our 10% should contain these ICMBAs also. Now, ICMBAs was a term given first, but now it's all coming under ESA overrides everything, as I told you earlier, right? So 106 sites in the country has been identified. That's amazing. Okay, 106 sites in the entire coast of India, including the islands of Lakshadweep and Andaman, have been identified, and it was an excellent job done by the team. Dr. B.C. Chowdhury and Dr. Shivakumar, many more of the team members in them who did a great job. And 62 out of the 106 have been identified in the West Coast and 44 on the East Coast. And 22 of them have been prioritized for immediate action. Gulf of Mannar is one example, Park Bay is one example. Okay, they are all being part of the ICMBA. So this is in general about the ICMBAs. It might be a little boring to you because these terminologies are very important. If you're a conservation driven person, he or she, then these are very important terminologies you know. And it is not just me talking and leaving it right now. Please go and refer and see what kind of work is done. You can refer the Wildlife Institute India website, which mentions all this I have told, except the ESA, because ESA we have done it. So except that, you can just verify and you'll have more information on that. And another important method is important bird areas, IBAs. Okay, now this has got the headquarters in Cambridge, UK. And it's basically driven by Bird International, which is an NGO again, and where the royal family of England itself is part of the committee, presidential kind of committee, right? And it's also very well known throughout the world for its excellent studies in terms of bird migration, in terms of residential birds, in terms of population decline, in terms of threats, and so on. So this is very important. In India, you see that BNHS, the Bombay Natural Society, is a very important IBA, IBA partner, and I am not very sure about SACON, Salim Ali Center for Ornithology, but I think because being a big government, even they would have been a part of this exercise of marking IBA. So India has got a lot of IBAs in the country, and we see that in Chennai, for example, if you take me, Palligarna is again identified as an IBA, very close to my office. Then we have in the coastal area, then we have Pulicat on the northern side. And what image you see here is image taken by one of my colleagues, where we work in a place called Bhitrakanika Conservation Area in Odisha. And it's a very beautiful heronry. Heronry is a place where many birds flock together and breed and then go back. Okay, but this is a local bird, the black-headed ibis and the open-bill stork. And you can see the small babies of the ibis and the small young one, the chicks, what we call it, of the open-bill stork, nesting very well on mangrove trees. Okay, that is very beautiful. And the same thing, if you're from Andhra, you can see in Egri, East Godavari River in Kakinada, the Koringa mangroves. You can see same kind of bird nesting happening in some places in Pichavaram. You can see like that, So every area that forms a habitat for bird nesting, as I told you, it's very important in terms of population to grow in the future. So IBAs are very important, and IBAs, I'm talking about the marine coastal IBAs, but there are also IBAs inside, inside terrestrial also, a lot of places like Vedandangal, for example, in Tamil Nadu is again. In Ramnath, we have many IBAs like that identified because, or in the process of being identified as an IBA. So this is just in general about what this organization and what kind of work they do. So they work on biodiversity, they work on how they behave, ethological studies, they work on how the population declined and what is happening to them, what will be the future scenario of this and birds. And then we have something very important called as Ramsar sites. Ramsar actually is the name of a small town, Iran, and it was the first site, wetland site in the world in the year 1971. So when the meeting happened there and the treaty happened there with some few countries which started, now it's big, as many countries are involved. I'm not sure how many are there as parties, but it's again big. And this is basically to protect the wetlands of the world, right? This wetland includes both the marine and the freshwater and the terrestrial area aquatic bodies. Okay, so this is Ramsar Convention, very important. And as I told you, the wetlands conservation management rules, which I introduced to you in the first few slides, plays a very important role in terms of identifying every state's wetland. Okay, now the definition of wetlands is a bit confusing because as per Ramsar's definition, even agricultural land which holds water for few months, 3 months or 5 months is there, it's considered as a wetland. So wherever the water is there for some period of time, it's considered as a wetland. And whereas the definition differ more. And in India, we are very active now. 2017 notification, the conservation management rule clearly asked all the state governments and the island territories and the union territories to make sure that the secretariat or the wetland management office is established in every state so that the state can take a scope. Now, many states have established, many units have established, and some are under the process. And the Ramsar site's headquarters in Gland, Switzerland. And the image that you see is an image taken at Chilika Lake, which is in Odisha. And this is a morning view of how the fishermen, the traditional fishermen, are going to catch their fish. Okay. Now you see that they use a single Lombardi engine, maybe a 8 horsepower engine that is used. But in terms at times of turtle nesting periods, at times of the Irrawaddy dolphin or the Gangetic dolphin, which sometimes rarely is seen, it doesn't come to the ocean much. But then at particular time, fishermen take very good care in terms of using the propeller. They use the sail and go smoothly. So they have educated well. We have a Chilika Developmental Authority, which is kind of playing a major role in educating the community, creating awareness, building capacity of different forest officers, different field level officers from Pollution Control Board, different state level officers, and make sure that Chilika Lake is still highlighted as one of the best maintained lakes or one of the best maintained Ramsar in the world. Okay, so the headquarters in Gland, in Switzerland. Moving on, we have something called CITES. Now, CITES is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. And CITES is, after CITES coming into play from 1975, again, it's found in, it's located, headquarters located in Geneva, Switzerland, India. We have the headquarters in Delhi. And CITES plays a very important role in trying to understand what is the link between illegal trade and the traders and the poachers and the community. Because there will be always communities identified what resources are available. When the resources are identified, the poachers go and poach. I'm talking about both marine and also freshwater. Dugong, for example, you probably yesterday or day before yesterday, one of our students, Dr. Madhumaki, should have probably spoke about the effect of what kind of protection measures have been taking place in dugong conservation. And dugong is eaten sometime, but now because of the intervention of WIA and the Forest Department, Strict Vigil, and CITES, you see that there's a lot of protection given to dugong. Like that, there are many species. You see the rhinoceros horns are there. Now, Operation Cobra was an operation that was free. This is in some other country, not in India. Like that, in India, every operation they have a name because it's very quietly, silently done operation. So most of the secretive, because people who work in CITES are mainly on deputation from the CBI, from different police departments, from Coast Guard, from Navy, and so on. And CITES works very closely with one organization in India called as the WCCB, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. So they play a very important role in tracking down what kind of trade happens. Okay, CITES plays a very important role. And then, of course, very popular one, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which all of you know, is a very active organization, again established 1961. In the year 1961, found located in Gland, Switzerland, and they have done a lot of work because what government people, staff cannot do in very short time with very limited manpower, these people are able to generate volunteers, WWF, and they have done tremendous work, and they work with government, all the CITES, the WWF, all the IBA, all the organizations which I spoke about, they all work the government, and they give a lot of policy decisions, lot of ideas to the government, so that the government can build more and more and kind of protect the species and lead make sure that there is no reduction in number of species, or there is the threats are minimized in the wild. All right, okay, this is again an organization called Traffic. Traffic is again, this is again monitoring network very specifically. Okay, so they see what is the trade routes and they try to curb the trade routes. Okay, so this is founded in 1976 and it is a part of the IUCN. Traffic, CITES, WWF, they all work very closely with one another, so that there's a lot of information, data taken and shared for to curb all illegal activities. And the paper that you see here was one invited article from my side. I led the I read the paper, and we wrote about the mollusca in illegal wildlife trade, and now it is being circulated throughout their organization. And also, we are not developing. I am developing a ready-made card, a wildlife identification card for Traffic, and it will be out very soon. Where I am collaborating with Dr. Ravinesh and Vijay Kumar from Aquatic Biology in Toronto. So this is very important, because Traffic will make sure there are identification sheets which you can use and you can educate people who can go to the field and find out what happens. Right. So all this while I spoke about some of the important national level policies, laws, and what kind of legal frameworks that we have to curb illegal activities, to see what animal and how they are protected. Then we saw about international organizations and national organizations which play a very important role in conservation, protection, in making sure that policing illegal trade activities and so on. But you see that regularly you see names like endangered, critically endangered, vulnerable. So these are terminology created by IUCN, okay, and we call them IUCN conservation categories, okay. I will not go into very detail because I prepared a very detailed one. I will just explain a little bit, introduce you to the IUCN organization. Then I will directly go to the different terminology that is used, because once you make a survey, you should know what category or animal XYZ or a plant XYZ falls into. So this is an International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, called IUCN. It's very active in India. We have also mangrove cell available. There's a MFF, Mangrove for the Futures. There are many more programs like that, small programs that happen within IUCN, and it is a government recognized and a civil society organization, semi-quasi, and completely working on nature conservation and how the resource can be used sustainably. And they are one of the best documenting agency in the world, because everything they document so meticulously, so very neatly, because whatever details they take will be going to the red list. We'll come to the red data book a little later. Okay, and the entire world can know what species, for example, if you take a species Y, what is the status based on their influence. So what is their mission? IUCN mission is to influence, to encourage, and to assist societies throughout the world to conserve nature and to ensure the use of natural resources equitable and ecological sustainable. This is the major logo. I will not go into details of the protected area categories. I will just introduce them because these are all separate topics. One is the strict nature reserve, one is wilderness area, because we have some in the country. Then we have the national parks. This is very popular among the people, and why this national protected national park? Because foundational, environment, culturally compatible, spiritual, scientific, educational, recreational, and visitor operation, which means ecotourism, all plays a very important role in the national park. That's why it's of high importance. Then we have natural monument and features. Then we have the habitat of species management area. These are very, very specific programs that happen within the IUCN. Then we have protected landscape. For example, from Ooty, you can see the beautiful the Nilgiri biosphere landscape. They're very beautiful. Seascape. So all these are being planned. And to introduce to you that we do a lot of landscape and seascape planning in our institute. We have done one seascape or marine spatial planning for a place called Sindhudurg, Maharashtra, and we did one marine spatial planning for two places in West Bengal. One is in a place called Sagar Island. We did an MSP for that, a combination of Sagar Island and also Digha Shankarpur coast. So we were the first in the country to do the marine spatial planning, hybrid of the landscape seascape planning, right? And also protected area. Okay, I will not go into much details. So this is the IUCN Red Data book. It will not come very regularly because it takes a lot of time to do research, and there has to be experts, and experts have to be scientists who are involved and IUCN members. it's a very important role that these scientists, provide the data, what kind of species is there, because they do the entire sweating work in the field and get the data. And I'm just giving you some examples now. This is the IUCN Mammal Red Book. This is a specific book of Indian animals. It's and vertebrata. And you see in the most important agency that is responsible as part of the Red Data book is ZSI, the World Survey of India, which is based in Kolkata. And like that, they have separately for reptiles also there. Again, these books don't come regularly. It takes time. This happened many years back, and it's time now that new Red Data books are developed. So Red Data itself is warning, and we have to make sure that our prestigious, the pride of the country of animals and plants should not be lost. Okay, so this is how you categorically go into the red list. I'm not going to go into detail because this is complete life and time exercise done by every researcher in the field to make sure that one species is to be brought under the difficult categories, critically endangered or vulnerable or least concern or data deficient and so on. Okay, so I'm not going to detail. I'm just giving you a bird's eye view. It tells about how area, how much they live, population they live. Everything plays a very important role, and so when you work out, then you'll arrive at a table like this, where your plant or animal species can be categorized, right? So you see that the first one is not evaluated. For example, if you take crow, the common crow, corvus, okay, house crow or whatever is there, right? They are called as vermin category, okay, because it's found in plenty. So we don't evaluate it because it does not have much importance. Though they have very important ecological, they act as cleaners of the environment. They take every dead material, every wasted food, and everything that is dumped by human beings, and they take it for their feeding, and they keep the environment clean. So they do a lot of scavenging work. So any animal or plant or bird that is not evaluated is called as any category. Then some will be there, but they'll be called as DD category, where the data is deficient. Though evaluation has been done, they've identified the species, more inputs have to go into it to make sure that data science supports policy making. And once you have enough data, then you see that whether the population is more or less. If the population is more, it's least concern, okay? But if the population is slightly dwindling, then it comes into the near threatened category. So these are the primary steps till where you see that the animal or a plant or a bird is safe. But once they come onto this category of threatened categories, you see that first is vulnerable, which means that there is a serious possibility of the population to come down because of habitat loss or because of hunting or any other parameters. Second is endangered, which means that you have to have a very strategic conservation management plan, and it has to be immediate. If it's critically endangered, then it is the primary priority of the country. Okay, like you see that tigers are endangered, and there are certain animals. Vultures, for example, in India, the Indian vultures, now they're critically endangered. And then we come to a next category called as extinct in the wild and extinct categories. Okay, so extinct in the wild, which means that in the outside, in their habitat, in their ecosystem, they are not there. But the last few have been caught, protected, and kept in a zoo or an artificially generated area for them to breed. Right. So that's called as extinct in the wild. And finally, extinct, which means that you don't even have a single animal living on Earth. So this is very important. This table is very important for understand. So when you do not have any evaluation, you call it as a not evaluated category. When you do the evaluation, you see whether data is sufficient or not. Data is not sufficient, insufficient data, we call it as data deficient. The adequate data, then you come under least concern or category. But actually, the threatened category comes when if it is vulnerable or endangered or critically endangered. And of course, we have the final category where the risk of extinction happens, where they become extinct in the wild and also extinct totally from the earth. So this is how it is, okay? Not evaluated when the taxon has not been assessed yet using the IUCN list of criteria. It is not using any other category, but using the IUCN criteria. That is the category of not evaluated, right? And then data deficient. I told you the data are insufficient. Least concern. A taxon is least concern when it has been evaluated against the criteria and does not qualify for critically endangered, vulnerable, or near threatened. Okay, and then we see near threatened. It has been evaluated but does not qualify for critically endangered, and so on. Like that hierarchy goes on. Vulnerable is vulnerable. It has been evaluated against the criteria and found to be at high risk of endangerment in the wild. Endangered, a taxon is endangered when it has been evaluated against the criteria and found to have high risk of extinction. So there is high risk. Right. Now this is an example of an endangered species. If you can take a guess, this is a mollusk, and this is a very interesting mollusk coming under the class Cephalopoda. This species is Nautilus pompilius. This is a very important invertebrate, mainly because this is a fossil, living fossil, and a connective link. What I forgot to tell you was the horseshoe crab, which you saw in the first slide and also in subsequent slides, is itself is a living fossil. Because these species, the Nautilus and horseshoe crabs, they have been living right from the time of Silurian, Devonian time, the geological timescale, GTS timescale, and you see that they have established themselves. Though many of their sister groups have been vanished or gone, still they have survived in the environment they live. So this is an example of a species that is found extinct, that is found to be endangered, right? And again, here critically endangered and extinct in the wild and extinct, which I explained to you a little earlier. So everything is based on the criteria and based on the evaluation done by the recognized IUCN scientific team. That is a very important exercise. Right. This is a nice photograph of the Asian cheetah. Right. India had plenty of Asian cheetah, and it was a pride to watch them in the grasslands and areas of Central and North India, right? But they have been hunted to extinction way back in 50s, 60s, and we don't have any of the Asian cheetahs available. And this is a classical example of Asian cheetah. This is found in Iran, okay? The place where I told Ramsar first happened, the place, the village Ramsar in Iran. So their population is slowly coming up now because the good conservation. The wetland is protected, the area of the habitat is protected, and you see that the animal is now coming into life. So there was even plans that the African cheetah can be introduced in India, okay? But there's a lot of confusion. African cheetah has to be brought inside or the Asian cheetah has to be brought inside and be released in the wild in India. Because the area required, the flat grasslands for them to run and catch their prey is now slowly it's coming down. So we have a problem with that, okay? So that is the thing. I'm just going to just present you with two more slides. This is something called as a combined database, which we have created in our office, in our institution, okay? Combined stands for Coastal Marine Biodiversity Integration Network. And here we developed a new database for only the marine and coastal species. So right now in the database, we have around 11,000 species of animals and plants, which are in the coastal area. And this can be accessed by anybody. Data is free, you can take it. But it's in the building process. For one species to get full information, it takes 2 days or 3 days. So imagine the time required for us. It requires 60 to 70 years for us to finish the data with 11,000 species of information. But what we have done is that we have made updated species checklists, and many of the papers are published in Zootaxa, many of the papers are published in the reputed journal of threatened taxa and checklist and so on, right? So we update the species checklist with the current taxonomic name, and we also give mechanism by which you can easily search, okay? And it is built with Darwin 2 core metadata format and with SOAP, simple operating access protocol, which means that it is in term, if you're used to GBIF, Global Biodiversity University Facility, or WORMS database, World Register Marine Service, all of them run in this Darwin 2 core, and our database runs in the Darwin 2 core, which means that we exchange and take information from each other, okay? It's a very important portal that is there. I'm taking you live to the website right now. And you can just, if you go to the NCSM website, you can just log in the website, and it's very easy for you to locate. So this is the website. If you're able to see it well, this is the website. For example, we are now trying to put in a lot of species. Right now, it shows 8,009 species, more than 13,000 pictures, which is taken from ourselves and from Wikimedia, where you can share images, from GBIF, where they give and take images from us. Okay, so we have right now close to 8,100 species, full information, and other is being worked on. For example, okay, if I say a dolphin, if you can go inside, you can see so many dolphins are there. Okay, now for example, Baja narrative oceanic dolphin, if I click on it, right, and I search it, it will give you complete information about the species, Delphinus capensis. Okay, if I go inside, it gives you information about the particular dolphin. Okay, you must have a good high net internet, there are 62 fields. You can break down to any category you want, including molecular, adaptation, everything. It's one of the kind of database in the country, and we are one of the best maintained database in Asia right now. Okay, and we are trying to now go to the next level of searching. We also have an Android app which you can download for only for Android phones. It's available on the website itself. In our website, you can take it from there. Okay, but more than all these things, the easiest way for you to identify a species, even if you do not know about this, is by using this unique species identifier. Okay, now this based on the shape, based on the structure of the plant piece or a plant leaf or an any other things, this you can easily track. Okay, for example, I'll take one example. I'll just take example of seagrass. Okay, they are grass-like, but there are so many species in India. How to find it? So, for example, the leaf was very sharp, not like leaf blade, or just like a small stick like this. Okay, but I do not know it. So, what I can do, I can go to the leaf shape, and I see what is okay. The leaf shape is tubular. This is called as filtering mechanism. When I press tubular, it eliminates all of the species, and I can click on the species. Syringodium isotifolium is the species, and I can completely know the history of it, including the map where it is present. Okay, this took a lot of time for us to build it and research on it. It gives even sometimes cross section. It's been referred plenty. Okay, we have to take lots of information. Even biochemistry it has got. Okay, it has got even nucleotides, different geographic location. For example, I can even see where it's located. Right now, for example, this is live in our set. So I'm just going to go inside and see. Right, see for example, India. If we say where it was located, this is all Lakshadweep Islands, and the Park Bay is shown very clearly. Okay, so you can go to any level and try and find out the information. So this is an interesting website that we have developed, and it's called Combined Database. And I mean, lots of things can be done like that for every group we are doing right now. Okay, so I mean, these are just few we have done. And sea snakes, for example, if I take a sea snake that it says snake-like, which means that even eels are there because they look like snakes. So, but with the tail, I can find it normal. If it's not a pointed tail, I mean, there is a pointed tail also. But if I say from it comes to 20 items on the search from almost 100 plus. Okay, so you can have time. When you have time, you can go through it and have a look at it. So this is about the database that we have. It talks about all information on what's there. So thank you. There's a lot to talk. There is a lot to kind of communicate. But due to want of time, I had to just introduce you to the different policies, different frameworks, legal frameworks that we have in the country, and how conservation is slowly lifting its head up in terms of India. And there are going to be lots and lots of work happening in coming days. And we, in our institute, we are doing a lot of work on the coastal area in terms of sustainable development, in terms of marine spatial planning, in terms of coastal zone management planning. So thank you so much for your patient listening. And I thank all the organizers and especially my classmate, Dr. Ambedkar, who has been very kind enough to invite me today. Thank you all, and thank you for your patient listening. And if you have any questions, you can please do ask.
Thank you, Deepak sir, for that splendid presentation of yours. Though it was on conservation strategies and various conservation measures of how to protect the marine organism, you made the presentation very interesting by those colorful pictures shared by you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a few questions from our participants here. Can I ask them now?
Yes, please, please.
Is the Palikarnai marshland declared as a IBA?
It has been proposed. We have a lot of problem. It's a development, and right now the forest department has taken as forest land. We have that thing, but we are in the process of almost getting it. I took the liberty of saying it has to be as an IBA, right? Let me check with the information available with the forest department, and probably I can give you more information. Or probably the best people to tell will be BNHS. We have some people on BNH also. We can just check with definitely let know. So I'll pass on the message to Dr. Ambedkar, and I'll make sure that the information comes to the one who asked the question.
What are the changes that we see in the EIA draft 2020?
Basically, you see that sustainable development is what is now being proposed, and if you won't believe, there are more than 30 or 40 ports that are going to come up in the near future. Okay, so there are going to be nearly 30 to 40 ports that have been proposed. So there's a lot of stress in the environment, and we see that there is a little, kind of a deviation from people-centered action. For example, I can tell if an area is being chosen for a developmental activity in terms of industry or a particular big government-based project, then usually what happens is that the concerns are spoken to the people around living there at the periphery and the villages nearby. And there's also involvement of CBOs and NGOs to make sure that that it doesn't impact badly, and what kind of effluents are coming out. Everything has to be prepared. But what we see in the EIA new draft is that it's the lobbying happens between the industry or the particular government agency and with the government itself, MOEF itself. So that's one drawback, but I do not know. I mean, there's going to be a lot of deliberation on that. Many people have voiced out that, it is going to be a concern. I work in a Ministry of Environment Forest Office, okay, but I'm a conservation biologist. So many times, even we are also, no, you just wait, your turn will come. So hope you understood what I'm trying to convey, right? So, but it is, everything happens, it has to be holistic. Being a conservation biologist, if I do an EIA, then I make sure that the animal or the plant is first highlighted, what is there, and then propose subsequent alternate, kind of developmental measure. But that doesn't happen always, and many places we are silenced also. Yeah, the question is well taken. It's going to take a lot of time for the EIA draft to come. I don't know how much of fireworks is going to happen, so we have to wait and see. Yes, hope I answered the question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any training program which you're conducting for students to implement conservation measures on marine biodiversity scientifically?
Basically, we have something for capacity building, which means that the student can come and work with us in terms of internship programs, in terms of dissertation for their masters, or if it's a part work of PhD, they can come and do it free of cost. Absolute no charge. The only thing is that they have to come through the proper channel, and there's a competition because all over India they compete, and we take a maximum of 15 to 20 students per year. Yes, it's possible. And we train them on all conservation, what kind of tools we use for conservation, for questionnaire preparation, what kind of work can be done, and so on. We share all the information with them. That's a capacity building exercise we do. Yes.
The next one is why there is not a proper ban on shark finning as an Indian protection law. There are still many sharks being hunted down.
Absolutely right. There are many sharks being hunted down, and difficulty is that you can take just the fin and leave the animal and come back, allow it to sink down and die because it cannot swim. For more details, I'm not a shark person basically. I did work some on shark, but the best person to probably answer this will be Dr. Akhilesh. He's an IUCN sitting member. He's the same for a scientist, along with Dr. Binesh. Binesh is again a scientist with ZSI in Andaman Port Blair office. And these guys have been tremendous in terms of bringing a lot of changes in the approach. And now I think for shark finning, some policy papers are being worked. Some policy papers have been out. But see, in many cases, we see policy papers, but the policy papers coming into practice is very rare. So that's the place where we have to have more focus. And I think Akhilesh and Binesh, two scientists who are freaking out. I mean, they're doing fabulous work on shark, especially on shark finning and capture, and probably they will give better information because I'm purely invertebrate person. I'm invertebrate taxonomist, so I have more idea on invertebrate. But again, question well taken. It's a place where we require more serious focus.
There's one more question. There are many scheduled species of hard corals and gorgonians which are being sold at major tourist spot in Gujarat.
Right.
There's no proper action taken against it.
See, this again, what happens is that the jurisdiction ends within the state. The ministry can form a framework, but the action has to come from the state level, district level, the divisional forest officer or the district forest officer. But anybody can inform. That is there. There are informers. There are also anti-poaching watchers. We call them APW, identified in every village. But even, certain things which you say you don't do, children like to do it. So there are activities like that which people think that there's a livelihood for it. There are places where the poachers have been, the people who sell this wildlife, we call them wildlife products, who have been arrested and who have been, fined. And they have also been trained as anti-poaching watchers so that they can be informers and the forest department give them decent jobs. And there are also cases where they themselves have completely changed into conservationists. So, you see in Gujarat also most of the corals that go are not from Gujarat. Gujarat corals are very small. They don't grow big in size because of the kind of environment. Most of the corals that we get is from Andaman or from Lakshadweep or illegally brought inside. So if CITES does the work, they are trying to track the trade now and freeze. When the raid comes, it happens sometime. Then for 1 month there will be no display, and after that again, after the 1 month period of kind of a lockdown is over, then you see again the trade comes in up. It's very difficult to control, but because see the forest department is very limited manpower. Imagine one division, they say 70 kilometers to completely kind of supervise. There will be 4 staff. Where can they start? Where can they end? Okay, but yes, you are right. The one who asked the question is right. There are many places, not just in Gujarat. Even you go to West Bengal, even you go to Kanyakumari or come to Cuddalore, there are places where corals, even Marina Beach, sometimes we have got people selling corals. We have informed that we got them arrested. Yeah.
Nowadays, many leopards come into populated areas, specifically outer areas of Lucknow and Uttarakhand, and some even the local people they kill it. How to overcome these problems?
People kill it because of fear. And because of the loss they have, either cattle is killed or children sometimes are killed and nabbed. I mean, they don't, children eating case, not there, but being mortally wounded is there because by the time people chase. But cattle going off is very, very common. And it's mainly because a lot of mining in these areas. And mining has led to habitat loss, serious habitat loss. Leopards, they like to live on top of trees. They live in mountainous area. Now, why from mountainous area they're coming down? Why we go to Lucknow, we take Tamil Nadu for example. Leopards come down Coimbatore. Right, so the issue is that the habitat is completely degraded, and people are slowly giving the pressure to the periphery. Either earlier the community was there, they were living very well, but now community is getting educated, they're going for bigger jobs, development happens, house which was hut earlier now has become a building. So there's a lot of habitat loss. So habitat loss is one of the major reasons, and of course scarcity of food, because once the habitats are degrading, then their food gets degraded. I mean, they don't have supply of food, and ultimately they have to find secondary sources.
One last and final question.
Yes, please.
How to overcome or stop species from becoming endangered?
The species? I didn't get the...
Overcome or stop the species from becoming endangered.
See, that's why I told you, that IUCN gives you a complete methodology. Because just because you saw the species once in 10 years, it doesn't mean the species is not there. Our observation should be very clear. That's why the methodology is given by IUCN to very neatly formulate. First, it comes from hearing, then it comes from seeing, and then you do the evaluation. Only the assessment is done. If you see the endangered species is there, then you try to formulate a policy for that. Unfortunately, what has happened is that most of the animals that we've done is on the land. Now, dugong has come, very good. Turtle has come in the sea, very good. But these are all big animals. What we can see, what about small animals? They're still in the growing phase. Is not the case for India, but throughout the world. We have to have more scientists. We have to have more community researchers, I mean the people. And as mentioned by my previous speaker, Balaji, ITK, Indigenous Traditional Knowledge, that's wealth. That wealth has to be tapped to see how the population is reduced and how it's either increasing or decreasing in the coming years.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak sir, for having a detailed discussion of the questions raised by our participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Thank you. Through you have to unmute. And now you go ahead. You're not heard through. Your voice is not heard.
No. Unmute.
Take your speakers through. Not over here.
Yes, Thiru, you can start.
Thiru, just try to remove your headphone with and just check with the machine. Just remove the plug point of the headphone and just see. Then try and see. Sometimes it happens like that. Audible. Still not audible, Ram. Dr. Saravanan, I think there is a major technical glitch with this connection.
I thank Dr. Deepak Samuel for having come here as our resource person and for sharing his knowledgeable presentation with the participants over here. I think there was a lot of positive reviews, sir, regarding your presentation today.
Thank you.
Conservation strategies and various issues and policies associated with it. I think you have kept the session very lively, very interesting with those colorful pictures which you have shared with our participants. Thank you so much for having come here. And on behalf of Tirunavukar sir, I would thank you for having joined with us for this presentation today. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much.
Dr. Deepak.
Thank you.
I now request our participants to give their feedback. If you're interested in giving your feedback, you can just raise your hands. We'll unmute you. Participants who are interested, yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Srikaneshkar, you can just yes, you can tell your, you can just give your feedback. You're unmuted.
Okay, am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers from Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College. You definitely, this is a tremendous webinar that you have conducted for sure. And as a fishery student, yes, it is very useful, and it had a lot of information not only about the fishes, also about the marine biodiversity that all students and all employees or all people around us should definitely know about this. Yes, in fact, I will definitely share this, my knowledge of what I gained from here to my classmates or my juniors, to everybody I'm around. Yes, sir, and it's a very tremendous webinar, and I really thank the organization, especially for conducting it. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Sir, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Nagarajan, professor in history, Rajeshwari Vedachalam Government Arts College, Chengalpet. For the past 3 days, I have learned lot of things about marine biology. Especially today, 3 sessions were held, and special thanks to 3 resource persons, Balaji sir, Anand sir, and Deepak sir. Very nice, excellent presentation and wonderful explanation. The participants who are asked the questions discussed with Professor Ramachandran sir. I'm so happy to take part in this opportunity to this event. I'm so happy. Thank you to one and all by the organizers and the resource persons. Thank you to my participants. Thank you.
From Dr. S. Prep from Vanishri Kagadesan. Mute my audio.
Thank you, Nagaraj sir. Thank you. Anybody else who want to give their feedback? Any participants who want to give their feedback? Yes, Jermia Pandian.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can share your
Hello,
feedback.
this is Jeremiah from Madras Christian College. I'm doing my final year zoology occasional, and also I'm being a program trainee in plant NGO. So, firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing a fantastic and enlightening webinar. Thank you, sir. So, it was very interesting and it's so helpful for the students. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Sarnan sir.
Hello.
Sarnan sir.
Hello, myself Shashank. I'm pursuing my MSc Zoology.
Earl John.
The webinar organized by your institution is very wonderful, and it enriches our knowledges. Being a zoologist, it is more important to know more about marine biodiversity and all the informations which was given in these last 3 days. Webinar was very much useful and more interesting and knowledgeable sessions. Thank you for organizers for giving us such a good opportunity to enrich my knowledge. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, yeah. Mohan Abdar. Yes, you can.
Hello. May I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible. Yes.
So very nice organization. The all experts or the speakers, they are coming from various fields, and I think all 3 days we enjoy this entire webinar because all marine diversity, their conservation, they are just not only listen but just we that is heard by various experts people. I am very thankful to all organizers and department. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mohan sir. Thank you so much. Yamuna Devi. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Rakesh. You can share.
Hello, sir. Sir, you giving the very valuable information I got in first time in my life, sir. So I am very happy to meet you with your team, sir.
Hello.
Yes. Nabajit sir, you can just give your.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to give my feedback. It's a very nicely presented and very wonderful session. All of 3 days, I put my all questions and you may transfer them, and our resource persons are giving back my answers. It's a very knowledgeable and it's a very interesting. I am not a totally marine biologist person. I am a zoologist person, but in 3 days I can gain more and more knowledges and more interest. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Nabajit, thank you. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu sir.
Sir, good morning.
Yes.
Sarna sir.
Yes, sir.
Excellent conduct, sir.
Thank you.
Very informative, very useful, very interesting, very pictorial, very knowledgeable resource persons. I'm assistant professor in Annamalai University Department of Zoology. Sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Excellent.
You can
please conduct more and more webinars like this based on fisheries.
Definitely. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. Sir, the feedback form is not opening for me. It says you have already filled up, but I didn't fill up at all.
We'll be posting it now, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, the feedback link will be posted soon after the session is over. Please wait for the feedback link. We are having some technical problem here. Please wait. here are a few announcements. We are coming up with yet another program on the 3rd and 4th of August 2020. It is an international web conference of innovative technologies, entrepreneurship avenues, livelihood enhancement in sustainable management of animal farming. This program is in collaboration with the Indian Science Congress Association. So this web conference will be on the 3rd and 4th of August 2020. The registration links are being posted for this. Participants who are interested in joining this program can join with us for this international web conference. It's a 2-day conference. Regarding the feedback of this session, the feedback link will be posted now. You can fill up the feedback link very carefully without any spelling mistakes and see that your email IDs are correctly typed on it, because there are a lot of emails which have been wrongly typed and many of the certificates are returning back to me for the previous program. So participants, please see that you're writing your correct email ID and your name also correctly. So now
Hello, sir. Am I audible now? Saravanan, sir? Sir?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. Sir, Saravanan, sir? Hello?
Dr. Thiru, I think Saranand sir has left the meeting because of some technical issue. You can carry on with the vote of thanks.
Yeah. Okay, coming to the vote of thanks part. Am I continue now?
Yes, sir, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. P. Srinivasan, principal in charge, Dr. Ambedkar Government Arts College, for his encouragement and moral support towards the program. And our sincere thanks to head of the Department of Zoology, Dr. T. Kumaran, for his technical assistance and meticulous planning for the grand success of this program. I would like to thank invited speakers from various fields. They have spent their valuable time and they are sharing their knowledge and experiences with healthy discussions, especially Dr. Adhavan, Dr. Titus, Dr. Armugam, Dr. Mahesh Kumar, Dr. Ajit Kumar, Dr. Dakoli Banerjee, Dr. Madhu Mahesh, Dr. Balaji, Dr. Anand, and Dr. Deepak Samuel. All the 10 speakers, they have shared their experiences of this platform. And I must thank my colleagues, Mrs. Malichelvi, Dr. Sasikala, Dr. Madhuram, Dr. Samiappan, Dr. Madhuvan, Dr. Mohan for their continuous support and constant support towards the program and their encouragement. I would like to thank Mr. Karun, Department of Mechanical Engineering, SSN College, Chennai, and Ms. Divyapriya Uttaman, Department of Robotics and Automation, PSG College, Kovai, for the technical support rendered to this program all the 3 days. And the fellow participants from various states from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, I think more than 270 participants, they have participated all the 3 days. Without your participation, this program would not be possible. Thank you for your continuous support towards the program. And for the, finally, the take-home message, kindly share the knowledge and conserve and save the mother nature. And I would like to thank Dr. Saravanan, our department colleague, for his meticulous planning and technical execution, and for certificate designing and preparation and the anchoring all the programs. Being an organizer, he could take pain and support to this event in a grand success manner. Thank you, Dr. Saravanan sir, being with us. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tinavakarasu, for the vote of thanks and also for the nice program you have presented. And it was a program which you wanted to do it right For the past 1 month, you have been planning for it, and so meticulously you have planned out this program on the national capacity training on marine biodiversity and its conservation. Thank you, Tirunavakar sir. I would like to thank all the colleagues of my department, specifically Dr. Malai, Dr. Madhuram, Dr. Shashikala, and Dr. Kumaran sir, who are with me in this virtual platform for the past 3 days. Thank you, sir.